Okay.
Okay, yes, I'm live. Okay, everybody, hello. Okay.
Hi.
So, you think that I'm transphobic from the stuff that I said the other day?
Yeah. Yes, I do.
Okay. I don't think I'm transphobic.
Do you want to state your beliefs in regards to trans people and evaluate them, or do you want to argue just why you don't think you're transphobic?
Okay, I'll tell you my beliefs.
Okay.
I believe that dysphoria, gender dysphoria, is real. I don't think that I don't think there's any standard or easy way you could ever necessarily convert someone to become not trans. Like, I don't think you could go to when they tried to fix gay people. Like, I don't think that that's something you could do with trans people with dysphoria. I define being trans as dysphoria. Having dysphoria, that makes you trans from a medical perspective, where gender affirming treatment is the treatment for gender dysphoria. I think that gender dysphoria is not something you're born with, and I don't think you're born with any identity. So I believe that you develop your identity, like say you're black. You're not born thinking you're black. Everybody
Have you
tells
done
you're
any?
black.
I just want to stop. Have you done any research into what academics actually think causes dysphoria?
Yeah.
Do you have studies that you could link me showing that dysphoria isn't? There's no biological basis for dysphoria.
There have been a lot of studies trying to prove that there's a biological basis for dysphoria, and it has never been proven whatsoever. It often relies on a belief that you can be born with a female or a male brain, and every time they try to validate this, it comes up absolutely bogus.
I doubt that that's what every researcher who's approaching it believes.
They try to prove it a lot, and there's a lot of research regarding trans affirming care and stuff with a goal in mind of proving that it's good, and they use self-reporting, and they use
so you're calling into
convenience,
question
Yes,
you're calling into question all of
academic
the data and the academic studies on this. You're implying that every researcher who's gone about this has gone about it with ulterior motives and is not practicing science.
Right. The ones that have a particular outcome in mind. Yes.
I think you could make the claim that sometimes studies are funded by big pharma, or they're funded by whatever. Sometimes those studies do exist, but to make the claim that all studies on this issue they all have a goal in mind, none of them are actually practicing unbiased science, is kind of a conspiratorial claim. It's unreasonable.
Right. Well,
you believe that the entire system
I don't
is
believe
corrupt.
that. I don't believe that. I'll explain to you the difference here. The conspiracy theory would be if I were hinging all of my beliefs on a belief that people have a goal or a motivation that is secret, and they're conspiring in secret to make something happen.
That is what you just said.
It could
they
be,
all have a secret motive that's guiding their research.
That's not what I know. That's what you told me I said before I could finish my sentence. But what I was actually saying, I know you think that, but that's not what I'm saying. I'm saying that the studies that are in support of gender affirming care, for instance, or there are other types of things.
Just a vast majority.
Yes, they are relying. There's not many better ways, but they're relying entirely on self-reporting in a specific way. Where if it was any other mental health situation, we would absolutely discredit any study that uses information in the same exact way. For instance, anorexia.
That's not true. That's not true. We
Yes.
do rely on self-reporting for
Okay.
other
So
things aside from
so
this
if
specific area of study.
so if yes, we do rely on it, but we in when it comes to mental health,
It's not discounted. It is a
we
legitimate
we
way
don't
that we conduct
it's
research.
it's not considered robust at all. And in regards to mental health and psychology, if you were to, for instance, people with schizophrenia, if you were to rely, your understanding of schizophrenia and how to treat schizophrenia was completely contingent on the self-reporting of literal people with schizophrenia, I'm sure that I'm 100% confident that our understanding of the science of the science, my stream, you couldn't see my fingers, the science of schizophrenia would be telling us something absolutely ridiculous and inappropriate and like unacceptable, because the way you treat schizophrenic people or people suffer, which is
Okay,
like
stop
so
now,
okay.
because there's several things you said that I'm going to address. And so just remember that you were talking about schizophrenia. You were going to compare dysphoria to delusion. And so, like, all of these studies have an end goal in mind. But then you said, but that's not the same thing as conspiratorially believing that they're corrupt and that they have secret motivation. But it is kind of two ways of saying the same thing in my mind. And then
agree.
you said, that's not what I said. What I meant to say was that they're using self-reporting.
Right.
And that's not robust. But those are two different statements. They're not the same statement.
I agree.
There's secret motivation, and then I feel like self-reporting isn't robust are two different statements.
Yes, I agree, but I was trying to say both of them, and the only one that really matters is that self-reporting isn't robust. The fact that I think...
But self-reporting is still a legitimate way to gather data.
I'm trying to explain to you why...
different things, not just dysphoria.
I'm trying to explain to you why in the context of evaluating the patient in a psychological situation, self-reporting of the patient with the psychological disorder is utterly inappropriate. In any other psychological disorder, we do not, it would absolutely be laughable or like you would... So
that is a legitimate way to conduct research. It's not considered as robust as some other methods of research, but that's a specific methodology that is accepted, is common. I myself have gone in and participated as a patient in self-reporting psychological studies. It was part of a course I had to take in Psychology 101 at UCSC.
For what?
Every other student was also required to participate in self-reporting studies, which were the most common because students in undergrad are usually going to gravitate towards doing a self-report study. It's the easiest way to gather data.
Yeah.
And it's very common. It may not be the most robust. It's very difficult to organize
it's in
other
fact,
forms of research. But that doesn't mean self-reporting isn't valuable.
It's valuable in many different scenarios. And it definitely proves the self-reporting about trans-affirming care or gender-affirming care about trans stuff. All of that reporting paints a very accurate picture in my mind of what trans people think is the right thing to do for trans people.
And it isn't just what trans people think is the right thing to do for trans people. It is what medical professionals and academics have decided
you're saying,
is the right thing to do.
You're saying the medical professionals
because
and academics
mental health
who rely on self-reporting.
Okay, but you've got this narrow view. All they ever do is self-reporting when they're evaluating trans medical interventions and treatments and psychological states. That's not true. It isn't just self-reporting. That may be a big portion of it even. I'll even grant you big because that goes on a lot in all different areas of study, especially psychology, especially like social behavior.
No, I'm trying to explain to you like this something you're not accepting that I'm saying.
That's not the only kind of research that goes on.
Something I need to
That's not
we can't move
all
on.
doctors
We cannot
and
move on.
Psychologists are relying upon when they determine that affirmative care is the best approach for treatment.
Sure. We'll talk about that in a second, but we can't move on past the fact you're ignoring a very crucial and important thing that I'm saying. We're glazing over the fact that self-reporting in the context of a psychiatric patient situation where the patient is suffering from delusions, like for instance anorexia.
There is a difference between dysphoria and schizophrenic delusion.
Anorexia.
What about anorexia?
Okay, so if we were to
body dysmorphia.
Yeah,
we actually do have lots of studies on anorexia that rely upon patient self-reporting. Right. I read some in preparation
I don't know what you're talking about.
With you on anorexia.
I'm going to.
I could
you're interrupting me.
Right
you're interrupting me. If we were going to treat anorexia the same way that we treat gender-affirming care or trans research with the self-reporting, what we would do is we would say, well, these anorexic people want to be super thin, and they feel suicidal of the fact they're not super thin. So what we need to do, and they think that they're fat, they think there's something wrong with their body. So what we need to do is we need to try to help them become super thin. Even though we're causing harm to their body, it's going to prevent them from being suicidal.
On. I need to close my window. I can hear my family talking and it's distracting. Remember what you're saying. I'll be right back.
What's wrong with my stream? Can you guys not see me? Let me check on YouTube. You're going to hear me doubled for a second. Hold on. Like unacceptable. It looks like I'm live. I don't know what you're...
Is it just a random chatter?
Yeah.
Do you want me to check?
Yeah. No. Okay. So if we were going to treat anorexia the way we're treating being transgender, but
it's not an appropriate comparison.
Why is it not? It absolutely is appropriate comparison.
No, it's not the same disease.
Why?
It's not the same condition.
I think it's actually almost literally the same.
No.
Why is it different? Why? Give me a study that explains to me why it's different. Because it makes no sense that it would be different.
It makes no sense that your inability to eat properly, your irrational feeling that you're ugly, disgusting, and fat when you're not, is different from having gender dysphoria.
Yeah, so you have
that that all your behaviors would culminate in you starving yourself to death ultimately. That's obviously something we can't condone and encourage.
Right, and I feel
that doesn't make sense.
Yeah, so I feel the same about gender transitioning. If it was the case that you could transition without doing harm to your body, and it was like completely, you could just push a button and be the opposite sex, but you actually can't become the opposite sex. You said at the beginning of this conversation that you acknowledged that you can't just convert people out of being trans.
Sure, yes. It isn't a delusion that you can break.
No. Okay.
It is gender dysphoria, and the only way we know how to treat it is with affirmative care. And every study supports that.
Okay. How do we treat...
And we're not discussing whether trans people are valid or whether affirmative care is appropriate. We're discussing whether your beliefs are transphobic. And I think
what's literally the same thing.
As we're unfurling that you are transphobic. No, we would be evaluating different.
You keep changing the topic, but so we were talking about.
No, you changed the topic into whether trans people deserve affirmative care, and I think that's indicative that you are transphobic.
Okay, so if trans people
whether they deserve access to trans.
Yes, if trans people deserve, it's not deserve. Okay, I think that trans people deserve to not be thrown under the bus, and I think that if you let them, just like if you let someone with anorexia starve themselves, you are doing them a disservice. I don't think that there's a standard way that you could convert people out of having dysphoria. But I think that if we change society so that people don't feel bad about their bodies and who they are in their identity within society, would make it so that people are able to express themselves in a multitude of ways without feeling boxed in and feeling like their gender is like a massive part of their lives, that is an anchor that is weighing them down. That's how we should tackle it as a society, which is something we're not focused on. But as far as people
you don't understand gender dysphoria.
Why?
You are ignorant.
Like because I disagree, I'm ignorant.
You need to learn. Actually, you need to learn how this functions.
Because
you need
I
to
disagree.
study the articles in more detail. You need to learn from someone who knows more than you.
So what is the thing that you know that I don't know?
Go into a state of mind where you acknowledge that you're an amateur.
Okay,
and that you are approaching this from a gender studies perspective, from almost a rad femme perspective, instead of approaching it from like
a trans
an
rights
academic
advocate
perspective. I'm not approaching this as a trans right advocate, even though I am.
So what is the thing?
I'm approaching this as someone who has trusted that these studies that are all indicating the same result are not corrupt by some secret conspiracy or secret profit motive.
I'm not hinging my argument on any. I'm not hinging my argument.
Would like to ask you.
I don't care. I don't care. I do not. No. I'm not. I'm sure. Maybe in a second. I'm not hinging anything I'm saying on any claims of corruption. I'm hinging what I'm saying about the quote unquote studies that you're talking about.
But you have a belief that you know better than literal elites who spend their lives studying.
No, I know for a fact. Okay, so maybe I do know better. I know for a fact that the way that gender dysphoria and the treatment of gender dysphoria is studied, and the evidence that people use is academically considered to be not substantiated.
If it were, then we would not approve these routes of care. If that were true, we would not live in a world where
but
these
if you don't approve it,
totally fully accepted by like almost all academics.
So we live in
almost all medical providers that this is the means forward for treating these people.
There is no other treatment. Like the other treatment is to suffer. So what?
There is no other treatment.
So
the treatment is to suffer. So why are you? So what are you saying?
I think that gender affirming care is also suffering, and I don't think it actually solves any of their problems at all. But I think that we have such a medicalized perspective on mental health altogether that we are unable to So we're like, oh, this is something we can do.
You also think people should take antidepressants or anti-anxiety medication?
I do think that, but in this particular case, it's particularly egregious because we are just giving them, oh, this is what they want, and they say that they're happier when they get it, and that proves it. So there you go.
Are you like an N-prim when it comes to drugs?
I think that taking antidepressants makes you complacent and makes you unable to better yourself in ways that'll actually make you not depressed.
So you don't think there's ever a situation in which a psychiatrist or a psychologist prescribing medication is ever to that patient's benefit?
No, I don't think that.
You don't think that?
You told me something that you think I think, and I said, no, I don't think that. I think
so. You do think sometimes that psychiatric drugs are effective forms of treatment?
I think they are effective at treating symptoms.
Do you not think they should be used?
I don't think they should be used. But I'll use them. I don't think that what I'm saying is not a personal if I think that if you make the choice to start taking antidepressants, you are also choosing not to tackle the underlying problems in your life that are
you don't understand psychology.
Well, you say
you don't understand psychiatry. You don't understand the role that drugs play in helping people with serious mental illness to get back on their feet.
You keep interrupting me.
Honestly, it's a privileged perspective.
You keep interrupting. No, I understand, and I would do it too. But what I'm saying is, okay, I understand why. I understand what they do. I understand all that. The thing that I disagree with is the medicalized perspective, the modern medicalization of mental health, where we have to give everybody a pill, we have to give everybody a solution, when in reality there is no escape. Like your life is suffering, and you cannot like escape from it. We can drug people until they're happy. Like all we want. That's not what's good for society, and that's not actually what's good for people in the end.
That's why I'm saying you don't understand psychiatry.
No, I do understand. I have a philosophical. I hate that you're saying that. I do understand. I just have a philosophical disagreement with the way that we treat mental health.
It isn't that we just pop happy pills into people's mouths like Brave New World to keep them drugged up so they don't have like an awareness of the fact that they experienced suffering. That isn't what psychiatry is.
Okay, we're getting closer every day.
I can tell you an anecdote from my own life if you value that at all.
Probably not, but I'll hear it.
I won't share it if it's not going to be valued.
Okay.
But yeah, you don't understand the.
Okay. Back to the thing.
This psychiatric drugs.
You keep changing shit.
You can stop because you interrupted me just now, and you
interrupted me 50 times when I was talking earlier. Tuna Chip, get in here.
Me.
Tuna Chip,
you
Tuna Chip,
me.
Tuna Chip, get in here. We need Tuna Chip. You interrupted me more.
Let me talk.
You interrupted me more. Okay. Because you keep changing topic. Okay. Okay. Important. Why are you doing this? Why are you acting like a child? You're very mature. I'm
making fun of you. Because that's ridiculous that you interrupt me to say that I'm interrupting you.
Earlier, you told me that I don't understand dysphoria and that I'm just amateur and I'm uneducated. So please tell me the thing that I don't understand. What is
You're
an
amateur because you didn't go to school for this, and
you didn't
your
either.
knowledge is amateurish.
Okay,
my knowledge is also amateurish.
Okay.
Yes.
Okay.
But I am looking at the majority of studies.
So what do you think
to the
I'm
same
amateur
conclusion
about?
And trusting them, and you're saying there's some conspiracy going on.
No. I would like
to hide the
I would like to drop
that we live in a medicalist society.
I would like to drop
I would like to drop
don't
care about self-improvement.
I would like to drop any discussion of conspiracy. I'm not interested in talking about conspiracies.
Okay, then don't make any conspiratorial claims again.
Then I won't. So I won't. For whatever fucking reason, we are researching and relying on evidence that would absolutely not be relied on for any treatment of any psychiatric delusional condition whatsoever. But in this case, we are.
That's transphobic. Delusional. That's transphobic.
Okay, why?
Because
think
it's
gender
not the
dysphoria,
same as a delusion, and
dysphoria,
it's actually not discussed that way
the only
by
way
psychiatrists or psychologists.
The only way that you can say that is if you are born with a gendered mind.
They're literally not the same as a delusion. Like delusions are just defined differently.
Okay, I think if you believe that you are meant to be the sex that your body is not, that is a delusion.
Do you want to bring Tuna Chip in as a moderator?
Yes.
Do you want to just keep doing this? So why don't you do that? And then we can resume.
Tuna Chip, come in. Yeah. Yo, okay, Tuna Chip's here.
How are we doing? Can you hear me yet?
Hi,
yes.
I can hear you.
You can hear me just fine? Cool. So, give me a second to try and make this a little bit more structured. Both as a conversation and literally make my camera more structured. Is this the proper dynamic right
Orientation is correct.
Okay, cool. So, y'all are having a little bit of a dispute here on who's interrupting, who's not. I'm going to step in. I'm going to try and regulate. There are a couple of questions that haven't been asked. I think that you guys have a couple of curiosities that you wish the other had about your opinion. So I'm going to ask them. We're going to try and get you to share your opinion so that you both feel like you're heard. I think that's going to make it a lot more easy for the conversation to continue. Smeth, you don't believe that the medical industry has a collective conspiracy to why they are saying the things that they are, you aren't necessarily saying that they are lying. What are you like? What is it that you think is happening in the medical industry in regards to the topic of gender dysphoria?
I think that they don't there is no other like I think that they want to medicalize it and give like this is a treatment that you can do, you can take this pill, you can change your body in this way. I don't think they're going to be satisfied, and I don't think that people with gender dysphoria are going to be satisfied without a solution like that. So this is what they have that they're going with. And I don't, and I think that people are afraid of offending trans people because it's become like the new gay rights. So
Okay.
disagreeing with them.
So it breaks down into two things. There is on one end, the first half, people want a solution, and the closest solution to like the degree of effect that people want so far has been either medical, surgical, whatever you want to call it, this variety of clinical procedures. That's the thing that has so far been offered that has the strongest effect, and you just think that it's not the way to go. And that separately, people inside of the medical field that might say, hey, this isn't really good enough, this is not creating the kind of results, and it's putting up certain sacrifices and risks that people shouldn't have to do. You're saying that people like that are being silenced because they are scared that if they come out and say there should be something better for gender dysphoria than this, they will be called transphobic. They will be called like speed bumps in progress, something like that.
Yes.
Okay. If that's your perspective, narcissist or necritis. I always say narcissist because knack.
Yeah.
The main thing that I saw that I thought was a little interesting. So with the delusion question and with the comparisons to schizophrenia and the comparisons to body dysmorphia, what is the primary difference between the types of procedures where we don't like taking client self-report, or why would you say that those are uniquely different from cases of gender dysphoria, where in the latter, in gender dysphoria, self-report is actually pretty credible and good? Because that seems to be your opinion. I want to see that underlined. What's the main difference to you?
So self-report isn't just taken at, say, face value, I believe. In any field that it's being gathered in, we understand that it's self-report. We understand that's what it is. It's that specific kind of data. There's other forms of research that are going on in this field as well in regards to treatment for trans people, in regards to trying to understand what's going on and how we can better take care of them and improve their mental health and quality of life outcomes. But so far, we know that one of the huge problems is the way society does not accept them. The way that society doesn't want to let them access this care and almost doesn't want to accept that they exist and wants to find some way to fix the fact that they exist at all. Wants to kind of erase the problem. And so I think that's where the resistance and friction comes from, with people saying, but transition isn't good, so why are all these doctors, why are all these exist? Because they think being cis is better. And so their mind just grates at the idea that transition is the appropriate treatment, because they don't want trans people to exist. They want people to be cis, even if it's painful for them, even if it increases their suicidality.
Okay, this is an interesting thing. So there are two different types of treatment. I want to push back at some point and just hold up to clear up a fact. There are other pedagogies that people use for treating gender dysphoria. When you say that it's the only one, you're saying that you think it's the only one that is good, right? I want to make sure that that's the thing that you said before. That's a normative claim as opposed to like a factual claim. There are other approaches. You just don't think that they're good. You don't think that they're on the right track,
If
correct?
there are other approaches, I'm not aware of them because I'm an amateur and the research I've done is brief and not detailed. What my research that I've done is simply look at the abstract of every single study on the first page when you search trans youth. And every study says, yep, puberty blockers are safe. Yep, affirmative care is the best approach to it's all we have that is effective. That's just what every single study said. That's all I have. I'm not a researcher. I haven't paid for all these articles to study the methodology and say whether I agree with it. I'm not even that level of academic. Who could really say, I think your methodology is fundamentally flawed?
I would say on the level of having research proposed against it, I'm aware of other treatments. I'm not aware, and I would have to do more research to check in on whether or not they've been tested thoroughly and seem to have better or equal results to affirmative care methodologies. But there are a couple that come to mind, primarily acceptance and commitment therapy, which is often used.
What is that?
Acceptance commitment therapy is a type of discourse therapy. It's a type of talk therapy, which is focused on two things. One, looking at feelings and then sort of saying about the feelings that instead of pushing them down or trying to do something that will make the feeling go away, I will try and accept the feeling for what it is, become comfortable with it, and recognize that the feeling is not actually a threat. It's a passing emotional thing.
That's an incredible practice, actually. And I've undergone that kind of therapy myself for my OCD, and it was beneficial. I'm actually assuming that that's going on as well as part of care for trans people.
A lot of it is. The main thing that I would say about ACT is that it is not a full approach, but it does treat the symptomology of pretty much any compulsive thought. So it is one of these things where dysphoria, dysmorphia, obsessive compulsive disorder, and even symptoms of PTSD, specifically the type that specifically emotional flashbacks as opposed to full-on experiential flashbacks, it has amazing effect. Let me just chew it and swallow it. You say something for a second.
That has legitimately helped me to as a person with like severe disabling obsessive compulsive disorder, not to get rid of it. I have obsessive compulsive disorder, but to not feel as much distress when I have intrusive thoughts and obsessions start, and to not fall into a ritual, which is basically me abusing myself.
Yeah, I agree. I will say, going back to what we were talking about before, but putting a flag in this, because this is going to be the main point. I think that here, and also something that you said earlier, are two major points of agreement that you and Smeth have. But this is a situation where you're not necessarily agreeing on whether or not that applies. So Smeth, I am on the understanding, I've had conversations with him about this before. He believes that the medical world is engaging in a form of neglect in regards to people that have gender dysphoria, and that this neglect is mainly perpetuating because there are a lot of people that want treatment now, and they're very resistant towards any type of answer other than this new treatment, which happens to create several examples of like big success. So you have a lot of people whose gender affirming surgeries have gone incredibly well. You don't have very many people for which they are not going well talking publicly about it, and we don't have enough data necessarily to know whether or not it is going to help, because we don't really necessarily know whether or not gender dysphoria, the typology of gender dysphoria, is still constantly debated, whether or not it is actually one thing or there are several different symptoms. so on and so forth. So before we create that ontology, it's going to be hard to make the data, which means it's going to be hard for you two to come to a similar decision, because it's never going to get down to the layman level. It's being disagreed in the clouds above all of us. I think you both understand and agree with the idea, though, that there is such a thing as a position where a doctor is doing something that is not in the best interests of their patient. Smeth is erring on the side that if there is no better alternative, what matters more is not being neglectful. So he thinks it would be better to have them do nothing, but tell them, hey, if you tried doing that, it would not ultimately, it's not consistent enough in effect, and it's not proven enough in effect for me to recommend it as in good conscience. And you, on the other hand, are saying, well, something needs to be put forth. Something needs to be put forth, and this seems to be the best option, even though it doesn't seem like it's a good enough option. We should start pushing it forward, merely because, let's be clear, people are alive now with this problem now. They might die soon. They might die before an actual better alternative comes out. Why not let them have access to it? So that seems like the main disagreement I see between the two of you, if that like regrounds it. Could I ask each one of you why you disagree with one another's? And first, if you agree with my my read and what your opinion is.
I agree with your read, but there's like some more like points about, like, I also believe that it's possible that you will stop being dysphoric, especially if you're young. Like, and to exclude that as a possibility is neglectful. Like, we can't know, but I mean, like, I know it's absolutely possible because that happened to me and it's happened to other people, and there's a lot of detransitioners. And so like the fact that is not like, we just want to, because trans people want to transition. They're like, well, I need this, you know, and so we want it to not agree with them about how they feel about themselves is seen as transphobic, but I just don't agree.
You're acting like trans people want candy and you're a parent saying candy's not good for you.
Right. Pretty much.
That's not what's going on with trans people. Trans people want to have access to medical care that they deserve.
Wait. They want
to have their right to exist.
No,
it's not a bad thing if trans people transition. It's not a bad thing if trans people exist.
Okay, I don't think it's bad if trans people exist. I don't like, obviously they exist. I think it's, I think that gender affirming care, they fucking exist. I'm not saying that they don't exist. I'm saying that the way, I think, okay, I remember. I don't think it's actually possible to change your sex. Like you said the other time that a trans woman is a woman. I don't think that's, yes. I think that's factually untrue. And the only reason to say that is
because you have a biological essentialist perspective, which is transphobic.
Right. Yeah. So I think that my materialist, like grounded in science and reality perspective is considered transphobic. And I believe that your perspective is like supernatural or spiritual or religious, or makes no sense at all.
Well, my perspective is academic.
It's not.
It is. This is the
It's
science.
not academic that a trans woman
is
a woman.
What is
Whoa, hold on.
The theory of gender as being a spectrum is actually very popular in academia. Your theory of gender as being binary is contested hotly in academia. So
I can give you my theory of gender.
It's a biological essentialist perspective, right?
Can I make sure that you guys know where this disagree? Academic. That's a sticking word right now. Smith, I believe when he's saying academic, what he mainly means is like the medical sciences, the hard sciences as they get called, and then we're looking separately at the social sciences and psychology on a separate end. There's a disagreement in academia. That's the fact. Academia is not settled. that it almost never is on things like this. There's a disagreement, an epistemic disagreement on what matters more, people's beliefs or a sort of question of what makes a person exist. In fact, that I was going to ask you, Knack, two questions, one for Smeth, one for Knack. I'm going to go with Knack first, because so far it's been a lot of Smeth and Knack, Smith and Knack. Knack, in your opinion, what is trans people existing? I'm going to create a couple of hypotheticals and then tell me in which of those you would say that trans people no longer exist. The first one, somebody creates a genetic modification such that you can make sure that your child will never have gender dysphoria. Whatever sex they are born as, they are comfortable with it. Second situation, nothing severely changes. We just make it so that people, in order to get a gender affirming surgery, need to pay for it entirely themselves out of pocket. They are only able to do that once they are able to have that amount of money, and they are only allowed to purchase it using money that is acquired through like economic means. You can either have it donated to you, you can have it so that you work for it, but it's not a medical program. It's not paid for by taxes or the state. And then third, a situation where people transition, and transitioning is so affordable and easy, and it can be had at any point, that as soon as you discover that you have gender dysphoria, you can get the procedure, and then within a week's time, even something insane and hard to believe, a week's time, you will be able to read and perform properly as the opposite sex, the opposite gender inside of society. In any of these situations, would you say that trans people have been not allowed to exist? And kind of explain what not allowed to exist means to you.
So I can explain not allowed to exist. I think it was a phrase I used earlier.
Sure.
Like, can I try to explain what I mean by that? The three situations you gave me are all sort of science fiction visions of the future in terms of gender that I don't really know how to respond to, except I would say none of them are perfect in a realistic sense, because you wouldn't want to immediately transition someone because they are thinking I might be dealing with gender dysphoria, because there's a process of evaluation and therapy and examination by medical professionals, and then also self-reflection on what's best, what's your decision you want to make as an individual, and what kind of care you want to procure. There's purposeful like pauses in these steps. Often surgery is a last resort. So that's not realistic or what's posited as most ideal for trans people. The first scenario was trans people don't exist.
She'll be back.
Yeah.
Sort of a hypothetical. We've perfected human genetics. Nobody's suffering. I would have no ICD. Oh, can you hear me now?
Yeah. You went,
can you hear
you
me
went
now?
for a bit.
Can you? I
can
can
hear
repeat the whole thing, or
yeah,
I can repeat part of it. Where do you...
Just we had gotten to the point where you were talking about the first hypothetical.
Right. So the first hypothetical is that we rush to treatment really quickly, and that's not recommended by medical professionals or in academia. There's like pauses in the process that allow human nature to exist. The fact that like self-reflection needs to happen. You need to talk with your doctors. You need to reflect. You need to do your own thinking, etc. There's necessary benchmarks in the process, and often surgery is a last resort. So your last hypothetical doesn't line up with what we think right now is the most appropriate way to approach this. The first hypothetical is like a scenario in which no one would ever have any mental condition that would cause them suffering. So that's just science fiction. It does not really relevant.
At least merely make it so that gender dysphoria is not an experience that anybody would have. Just that one. So at the point where a person would
if we can do it with gender dysphoria, we'd be able to do it with everything else, right? Like that, to me, it's just science fiction.
Not necessarily. You can talk about it as science fiction, but I guess the main idea is like there are multiple ways that could potentially happen. One, would be that we genetically alter people such that some part of their brain that recognizes others and sees gender division and then looks at the self and finds a discomfort in becoming would not be able to like connect to the part of the brain that feels like emotion. There would be no suffering. You might say that a person would be like, that's a man, that's a woman. I look more like the man, and I wish I looked like the woman. Maybe you could even just get the thought could exist, but the emotion and the suffering wouldn't happen. Any component of that where the person doesn't feel compelled and tortured by the fact that they are not the sex they would like to be. I'm imagining that, not necessarily that the thought never happens.
Okay. Well, I think that's speculative, and I can't really engage with it.
Yeah, I mean, I'm asking for the hypothetical. Would you say that in that reality, trans people still exist?
You specifically posited in your statement that they don't exist.
No, well, by your definition then. So I'm asking whether or not you think that person, by virtue of the fact that they don't feel a strong emotional attachment to the act of transitioning. So you're implying then, and I'm just
I don't
checking.
know what you're talking about.
So when people say that people don't want trans people to exist, maybe we should just go straight to that. What do you think trans people not existing looks like? Do you think that it's always a negative, or always or sometimes a negative, sometimes a positive? What are your thoughts on that?
They do exist.
What if they didn't?
So
what if
why
there's something
would
we
they
could do
didn't?
that would make them not exist?
What's the purpose in your question?
I want to know whether or not. Okay, so different forms of treatment are trying to answer the question of gender dysphoria. They're trying to answer it either by making it so that it never happens. That was what my first hypothetical is. Just make it so that people never feel gender dysphoria. The second one was they feel gender dysphoria, but, and this is like more like what the right wing's ideal situation is, the more peaceful right wing, not the Christian weirdo one, is, hey, do whatever you want with your body. It's your body, you're right, but don't make other people pay for it. Some people say that not having the government pay for that, but having the government pay for other procedures is essentially an effort to make trans people not exist. And then the third one is a hypothetical where trans people exist, but gender dysphoria has no emotional suffering component to it. It's merely a thought that still happens, but there's no suffering involved. Those are three different ways that we could go as a next step. And I want to know which one is like a negative, which ones are negative outcomes to you, and which ones are fine or maybe even good.
I don't think there's a reason for me to make a value statement about what hypothetical future treatment for trans people is the best. I think that academics would decide what is best. They would pursue the most ideal care for trans people, and trans people would opt into the care that they desire.
But
I'm not making a value statement about what I think as an amateur about where we should go with trans research. I'm saying I think Smeth is transphobic, and I think that we should allow trans people to exist. And what I mean in saying that is just stop acting like all the academics are lying and that affirmative care is horseshit.
Yeah, but the thing is, but the difference between those hypotheticals is not something you can resolve with science, like to prove one or the other. There are different values that people can have. So if I value a particular outcome as the healthy, like outcome that is better for people, then that outcome is like good. But if you value a different outcome,
it's not really your business what someone else chooses as their medical care.
Well, you could say the same about it's not my business about like the death penalty, but I can be against that.
No, it's not your business if I have an infected eye, and that becomes blind if I decide to leave it in or get it surgically taken out. Whatever makes me feel better, right? Whatever is going to be the appropriate care that me and my doctor agree upon, right?
Sure, but if you think,
or if I decide I want to have a fake eye put in.
Right. I think that
that's up to me. And
I think that people that believe, sure, in that case, but if you believed if you wrongly believed you had an infected eye when you didn't have an infected eye, or you just believe that you
then I wouldn't be diagnosed with an infected eye. Right, they wouldn't take my eye out if it didn't need to be taken out.
Okay, but if you believed that you didn't have any infection, but you believed that it was wrong for you to have an eye, and that you were meant to only have one eye, and you feel violated when you look in the mirror because you have two eyes, and you feel it's a necessity for you to have one of your eyes removed, I think that they should not let you do that.
I think you're referring to like phantom limb syndrome. Maybe that would be a better comparison to what you're trying to get across. Like, hey,
There's
I don't think
another
you should
term.
cut off your leg just because you have phantom leg syndrome or
This
feel
is
like
a
your
sort
leg
of
shouldn't exist.
hypochondria.
Oh, it's like
This
the
is a-
opposite of phantom leg syndrome, right? Like you
Yeah.
feel like your leg shouldn't exist.
Yes, yeah.
So I don't know what the treatments are for that, but I can tell you the treatments for gender dysphoria are what I've already outlined. So
Okay. Well, the
us
treatments
like acting like we know better when we are a
No, but
bunch of
it's
people
not-
streaming on Twitch makes no sense.
Well, you're acting like you know better than me.
I
But,
do
like,
because I'm listening to the actual academics.
No, but
because you're
it-
transphobic,
so
and
it- so-
you using your platform to like advance transphobia is irresponsible and hurts people.
Okay, so in the case of if you want to have your like limb removed, there is there is treatment for that, where having your limb removed is considered a treatment for that. But most people think that that's abhorrent and we should not allow it. It's literally the same dichotomy, except in this case, more people side with my perspective that we should not allow that as something to let people do, because I think it's negligent to allow people to remove their limb because they don't like their limb. I think that you're letting harm come to them. I think the same thing about transitioning your body, and I think that there are like healthier alternatives. I think it's just it's self-harm, and I think like if in the case where you could press a button and your sex would just completely change perfectly, I would be completely for it. Anybody should just do it. I don't care. But like it's not perfect. It's harmful, and it makes your life bad.
Smith, I want to put you to this. I want to put you to the same test that you're trying to put NAC to.
Okay.
How do you feel about methadone?
Methadone. Yeah, I had this conversation, I think, with Tom. So you are addicted to heroin is the hypothetical, right, or the situation, and you could just not take anything, or you could take methadone to try to alleviate your symptoms.
We're not going to go into the hyper details on what methadone is used for and not used for, but simply put, if a person goes to a methadone clinic and methadone is understood and agreed upon by the medical sciences to be something that this person, like whatever their barometer is at any given time, if they say, you know what, methadone actually is a form of, say they say it's harm reduction, they say that it's treatment, regardless, if they give it the thumbs up, is that good enough for you?
Okay, it is to some extent, but only because I don't believe that there is advocacy for methadone that preclude that. Like there's nobody that's telling me if I disagree with the use of methadone that I'm addict phobic and that I like hate like people that are addicted to heroin. And like just because I have a difference of opinion. So I feel like there is like a literally equivalent to a religious movement on the side of gender affirming care that
that's transphobic.
You're not right actually about that. There are a lot of people that, so there's an entire movement. Now that might not be the easiest one. A lot of people would say that if you aren't okay with needle exchanges, where people put out a box that collect used sharps, and then people go out and give clean needles to people on the street that they can use such that they don't contract HIV and such with one another, that some people will say that is an act that needs to be done, because otherwise you're saying homeless people, basically by virtue of being addicted and being poor, deserve to get AIDS.
Okay.
That is a massively popular belief.
I
they
agree.
would call you ableist for it.
Okay, I agree with. So basically, we're talking about harm reduction in general, and I agree with harm reduction as a standard for making decisions. I think it's good, but I don't think it's a solution to a problem. And I think that if your solution to the problem is just to engage in harm reduction, you are avoidant of the problem and you're negligent. So if our solution to the opioid epidemic is just needle exchanges and that's just the be all end all of the whole thing, then I think that we are absolutely being negligent. Like if your governor like decides to do that and as the complete standard of care for an opioid epidemic in your city, he has completely thrown your whole city under the bus. He's not doing anything to actually address the issues. He's just trying to put a nice, like, pretty little band-aid on it.
It's a ridiculous thing to say. Like that harm reduction has no value because it doesn't completely solve the problem.
It's not.
I said it has value. I just think that it is negligent as a singular solution.
Just because something doesn't solve the whole problem doesn't mean that it shouldn't be advocated for. That doesn't mean that it isn't something that's ameliorating certain symptoms that society or people are suffering.
Smeth, do you think that some people can't be saved from addiction?
From addiction, I don't know. How
about homelessness? Because I can give you some experience having worked with both. And in the homeless community, there are a lot of people that, due to a variety of mental conditions and necessary medical standards of client-centered care, the only way that you could ever really get that person off the street or to stop using drugs would be to arrest them.
Yeah.
I'm of the opinion that when a person can't be saved other than by force, it's okay to let them die. I think their agency matters more than their life. I know that you seem to be on the opposite side.
Right.
If the only way for a person experiencing gender dysphoria for them to stop witnessing and experiencing gender dysphoria is for us to, it's not well, in the case, if it was so easy to transition that it was on the streets and cheap, then it'd be a bit of a different situation. But in this case, make it so that it is illegal to do the thing, at least for them. Would you say that that is a more reasonable thing because you are saving them from an infinite series of ineffective treatments? Or do you think that it is better to just let them go, let them do whatever, let them do a suboptimal, but at the same time, probably for them individually, the best thing that they have?
A couple of things. I think that I don't think it should be outlawed or completely prevented. Like, just like with like depression or anything, like there's obviously extreme examples where there's like I'm not gonna ever be the one to sign off on it, but I'm not gonna try to put myself in that position either, and I want to just trust people to do that. But I don't think that all the people that are transitioning and stuff are these extreme cases at all, and I think that's like very, very few. So
in those cases, what is to be done?
In those cases, so like, what can you describe those cases? Like,
yeah. So let's say that we create your ideal hypothetical, which I think your ideal hypothetical is a world where there's some form of therapy that happens really early. You try and tell the person, hey, you are having these feelings.
Let me fix that.
Oh, yeah.
If that's true. That's something that would exist in my hypothetical. But even more than that, so I believe that people develop gender dysphoria in large part. I think there's a lot of reasons to have it happen, but a large part is because of like you hate being a man because of what you think a man is, and the way the men in your life, like your parents, have a lot to do with it. The role models that you have, the way that men are treated, like, and the way you want to be treated, and you want to be treated like a woman. And I think that all becomes, as you develop into an independent person, you actualize, I think that becomes solidified in your identity, such that you hate yourself as a man, and you see yourself as a woman. That's what you should be. That's the right person to be. And so I think one of the most important things to do is to make people, is to stop putting these expectations on people. I think like men should wear skirts, women should do like, I think all these gender expectations are unhealthy. I think that gender affirming care actually reinforces these expectations on society rather than dismantling them. And I think it makes it actually harder for people to escape and makes gender dysphoria more of a dilemma for future people.
To ground this, because I need to synthesize that to answer the question. So in your hypothetical, the solution to gender dysphoria is to fix gender.
The long-term solution, yeah. It's not a short-term solution. Yes.
Would you be willing to imagine a world where we let people transition, and then simultaneously the people that are transitioning are held to account in the same way that cis people are when they are performing a gender role that is bad and perpetuates like a strictness of character? Because I agree, yeah, people want to have tits, people want to have cocks, people want to have pussies, yada yada yada. That's not the stuff that you care about, I think. Do you think that there's something toxic about the biodiversity, or is it about behavior and in sociality?
Well, I think that the desire to change your body comes from the sociality. I don't think anybody's born to hate their penis. I think that you develop into someone that hates their penis. And I'm not saying you can snap your fingers and make that go away, like that's part of you now. But I think that comes from the influences that have developed you into who you are. I don't think you're born with any such identity at all.
You've got somebody in your chat, Sleepy. Do you not think that intersex people grow up naturally to hate their penis and hate their vagina due to the fact that it's malformed?
No, I don't. And if it gave them pain, yes, but on an island without other people, I don't think that they would naturally hate it. If it was completely functional and was not painful or caused them like physical distress because they were born different, I think on an island they would not feel uncomfortable about their body in such a way. It's other people that make you feel that way. Like black people aren't born with the identity of being black. Like they have darker skin, and then we are like, you're black, and they're like, yeah, everybody treats them like I'm black, and it's just part of who they are. But it's not because they were born thinking I'm black.
Sure. All the same though, I think that what Knack is saying when she's saying that it's transphobic to claim that these people are experiencing a delusion is to say that those same social factors, which are making them feel as if they don't fit into the category, are not actually there. Because I do think that the social factors that make a person feel like they are in the wrong sex are external, just like you. And I think that Knack recognizes that too. But it's the biological that is then made a target. And by and large, when a person has that target made, and that change could make them adhere, the medical science cares more about whatever's going to make that individual person's life better than these grand social plans. So if the medical research is saying right now, hey, even if they could prove, hey, sexism makes it so that little girls want to transition at an exorbitant rate during pubescence because they start getting abused and predated upon, and being a man would be better. If the research starts saying that the way that I know that generally your field agrees with, I think they would still say in the end, so let them do whatever is going to make them feel most at ease with their relationship to the outside world, because that's changeable in a way for this person during their lifetime that the other problem is not changeable. The suffering is avoidable.
This is the...
And all the while, still try and fix gender. That seems a lot closer to your idea.
Sure, but the unsatisfying conclusion to this is what I think here. But this is something that maybe I could be...
Medical practitioners are themselves not trans.
Hold on. I disconnected and I reconnected.
We hear you just fine.
Yeah, I know you heard me, but...
Oh, you mean from your streams?
Yeah, I don't know what happened there.
Hey, I'm gonna let go. I wanted to create some stability, and now I feel like I'm just involved in the conversation in a way that would be better. I want to step out so that Nat can have the conversation that she's here to have. But
sure.
Recognize in one another, 100% think this doesn't need to be a conversation where Smeth is a evil transphobic person that hates individual agency, and also that Knack is not just like I don't know, being soy and saying that you don't have the authority to share your opinion. Both of you have like some kind of like situation of like an ideal outcome, and I think that you'd mostly agree on the present condition. Why are the outcomes different? That'd be the main question I'm asking. Anyway, peace.
Peace.
Thank you.
Yeah, of course.
Knack, you're oh, it fixed. Never mind.
Oh, good. Hello again.
Okay.
I disagree that gender dysphoria is caused by socialization, or else we would see much higher rates of it in both genders. So I think that premise is false. Anything that follows from it is predicated on a misunderstanding.
Why?
Why what?
Why do you think that's false? What is the misunderstanding?
That gender dysphoria is caused by socialization.
But why is that?
It is not.
I think that...
Or else we would see far higher rates of gender dysphoria.
I don't think that's true.
If we were socializing people en masse in such a way that we were creating gender dysphoria, it wouldn't be such a minority, super minority of the population who suffers from gender dysphoria to the point that they're going to pursue therapy, affirmative care, get diagnosis, go through benchmarks, pursue puberty blockers or hormone therapy, go through everything that they go through in society, getting treated like freaks, having to deal with the fact that people argue about whether they're predators by nature, whether like...
Do you think I'm doing that?
I think that
you're lumping me in with that.
I think you're engaging in misinformed discussion of the issue.
Yeah, but you haven't really answered my question.
Empathetic to those people.
You just... I am 100% empathetic with those people. I just have a disagreement with how to treat them. And it's like, so you haven't answered my question. Why is that wrong?
Credentials to disagree with or weigh in on what their treatment should be.
If dysphoria is not socially informed, so you don't develop it, you're saying that we're born with it. There's no evidence for that. And every time they try to prove that, they come up empty-handed. The only solution that makes any sense is what I'm saying, which is and there is evidence for that. So like, I don't like you're handing me a premise that you want to be the desired outcome, but you're not actually like, there's no justifiable reason to think that people are born to be gender dysphoric.
You're saying they're created, not born. I'm saying that's probably not true or else we would be seeing way higher numbers.
I don't think that's
I don't know.
I don't think that.
I think studies, what exactly causes gender dysphoria. We also don't know what exactly causes people to be gay, but we accept that some people are gay and it's okay for them to live their lives gay. That it's not better for them. It's not better for a gay man to marry a woman and pretend his whole life. I don't think they're the same. We finally agreed that erasure of gay people isn't the way to go.
Okay, I don't.
Erasure of trans people isn't the way to go either, or forcing them to not pursue care that could help them.
Okay, I want to go
It just
point by
doesn't
point.
make sense.
Point by point. I think that it being socially informed does not mean that there would be a larger number. I think that it could mean that if we had a society that really, really, really made us all hate ourselves. But I think that the way it is, we have a society where men are fit into a certain box and women are fit into a certain box, and a lot of women hate it and a lot of men hate it. But some men really hate it, and some of those men turn into incels, and some of those men end up becoming red pillars, and some of those men become trans and they become trans women. And I've talked to trans people before. There is a big pipeline from inceldom to being trans too.
So this is like a sociological theory that you've come up with, but you don't have any actual evidence for it.
No, I think that your identity
purely social thing.
There is evidence for it. There's also evidence for socialization and like psychological development being part of what makes you gay. That doesn't mean you're not gay, just like it doesn't mean you don't have dysphoria. I think these people
why do you
exist.
think that they shouldn't be able to seek care on the basis of how they became trans? Even if I granted you that, even though you don't have evidence, it doesn't matter what mechanism by which they become trans. If they are trans, they are experiencing a problem, and the treatment is this. Why can't they make the informed decision to pursue that care? And why is it your business?
Okay, so I just want to put a pin here. This is a different topic, but I'm happy to go down this road too. So when we get to I do think they exist, and I do have empathy for them and care about them. But the thing that I think is best for them and best for society isn't the thing you think is best for them. I think it's also. Just also say, I think it's possible that gender affirming care will make them more happy. But now to get into your what you're coming at here, I think in most cases it actually won't make them more happy, and I think that they will report being happier. But I think that to transition as it is today you're going to undergo a lot of suffering, like to extreme amounts. I think that it's rarely even all trans people I've ever talked to talk about how they still feel dysphoric, and they even if they pass incredibly well, they will be so fixated on whatever parts of them they think don't pass, even though they completely pass, and they will have fits, like crying fits, or freaking out about it, or going to the bathroom. And so I don't think,
because they have a mental condition that doesn't go away just because of transition. Transition helps. It's a proven method right now. It's not ideal. It doesn't fix the problem entirely. And you're talking actually about anecdotally what trans people have told you. And at the same time saying the self-reporting studies, you don't really put much value in them either. Like, we can't trust trans people to self-report just because they experience dysphoria.
Right.
But that doesn't really follow.
It does.
Just because you experience dysphoria doesn't mean that you are going to lie and say you're happier than you are because you transitioned.
No. Okay, so here's the thing. I don't think so. People that say they don't trust self-reporting, like me, correctly believe this is a fact. We don't know how we feel about people are only most people are only 20% self-aware. And I think that if you have dysphoria and then you get gender affirming treatment, you're going to think that you're happier, but you could be making yourself way more miserable without ever realizing it. And that's the type of thing that happens to people all the time. People make decisions that make them way more miserable in the long run, but they believe that they're doing something that's making them happy. People do that with dating. That, for a good example, is dating. People that do that all the time. They date people that make their lives miserable, and they think that they're having a better life for it. They think it's a good choice for them, but actually they're destroying their mental health, and they're destroying their quality of life and well-being.
The data doesn't show that trans people transitioning is destroying their quality of life and well-being. It actually shows that it improves mental health and quality of life.
Yeah, but it's self-reporting. 100% self-reporting. There is suicidality rate, and
there are objective measures of well-being as well. It's not just self-reporting.
Suicidality rate. I can get into that.
The suicidality rate reduces.
Right.
But doesn't go away. This person is still trans. There is still circumstances in society that make it hard for them to exist. The fact that sometimes you'll be stopped when you try to go into a bathroom because people haven't accepted that you have a right to go into that bathroom. The fact that anytime you might turn on the TV, you could tune into a conversation about how you're a nasty predator who shouldn't be allowed to exist, shouldn't be allowed in.
I'm not saying that. Like you're lumping me in with that, but as if that's me. That I would agree,
I'm trying to explain
that is
to
transphobia.
you that this is a problem in society that perpetuates their suffering.
No.
And that what something we can do to make their lives better is to just be chill, dog.
Okay. The thing that thing that you just described is transphobia. To call them all predators. To
and you're
to
participating in transphobia.
No, I'm not calling them all.
No, their dysphoria isn't valid. They're self-reporting and they're probably lying.
Dysphoria.
They don't know the best care that they should.
I'm not saying their dysphoria isn't valid. It's 100% valid. I think that gender affirming care isn't valid treatment.
But you're wrong about that.
Why?
Because all the academic studies show that you are.
I'm derailing the conversation, but
I'm derailing the conversation by referencing science, and you keep referencing.
I was trying to reference science, motherfucker. I was trying to reference science instead of ideas, and you derailed it with your retarded ideas. What I was trying to say about the suicidality rate is it in fact does go down. But the last time I saw the statistics on 7 years after transition, it goes right back to where it was.
Yeah, almost like they still have a mental condition that's perpetuated throughout their lives that we haven't completely solved, and that is exacerbated by sociological conditions where they're not accepted.
I think that they're trans because they're not accepted. And I think that if you let somebody change their self,
they're not accepted.
Yeah, and I think if you let people change their bodies to be accepted the way they want to be accepted, you're doing a massive disservice, because what they actually need is to truly be accepted. And if the only reason that you get validation or acceptance is after you've changed your body, for instance, like you're a woman and you don't wear makeup and stuff, and well, I really want to wear makeup, just let me wear makeup, and then you wear makeup like you're a kid or whatever, and your dad's like your mom, she's like, okay, you can wear makeup to school, and then everybody loves you and you get accepted. I don't think that that's a good decision to let you like undergo to doing something like that just to get acceptance. I think that the true acceptance is acceptance of them without transitioning.
That's not true acceptance, because you're denying their right to transition.
Well,
true acceptance would be accepting that that's the best care available to them, and if they decide to pursue it, that's okay. Even though you have decided that you don't think it's the appropriate care, that doesn't mean that they've decided that. And you have to admit that the science doesn't support your argument.
No, I don't.
The right thing to do for a dementia patient is not to constantly remind them you have dementia.
Right. I don't think that either. Like, that's not how I would talk to a person with gender dysphoria. Like that's how I talk to you talking about. But if I was like a gender dysphoria,
you're broadcasting this. You're talking to a lot of people right now.
Yeah. Mostly those people aren't trans. Maybe some of them are. Maybe a lot of them are. But I'm not talking to a specific
those
trans
people
person.
matter.
Okay, but I'm not talking to a specific trans person about their specific mental health. So, like, I'm talking about like what we should, like, what I believe is the appropriate way to handle this type of thing sociologically, or like prescriptive wise. Like, to a trans person, if you are like a trans like therapist or whatever, a lot of that would, like, I would assume that there are people, if you are trans, there are people in your life that do not accept you for who you are. They want you to, so like you're a trans woman, you have people in your life that only accept you if you're like a man, and you not being manly is like something's wrong with you. And like that kind of thing I would expect to be like a through line for most like trans women, that they're like, and if only they had grown up in an environment where they are accepted for all of who they are without feeling like they had to change themselves, then maybe they wouldn't have developed an identity with that they believe that there's something wrong with them.
You don't have any evidence that that's what creates dysphoria.
Okay, well, you don't have any evidence of the contrary, and to what I'm saying, there is a lot of evidence to suggest that this is how psychology. You said I don't understand psychology. This is how the human brain works.
I don't think you actually understand
psychology.
The mechanism that creates dysphoria.
You don't either. I think I understand it more than you do.
So I'm an amateur. You're an amateur. You are a proponent of basically a radical feminist, gender abolitionist claim that
abolitionist,
that
not
people
radical feminist.
Who are okay. You're a proponent of a gender abolitionist claim that people who are trans shouldn't pursue medical transition because you think, well, they should just abolish gender altogether. That's not. That's not reasonable, and it's not supported by the evidence, and it is transphobic.
It is reasonable. It's not transphobic.
Your belief that gender shouldn't exist is unreasonable because people have genders. And they want to have genders.
What do I think shouldn't exist?
And trans people want to identify as their gender, and some of them want to transition. You can't just tell everybody you shouldn't even have a gender, though. That's the solution to a problem. It isn't the solution to all of our problems.
Similar to
it's your belief. That's your personal belief. And you can have your personal belief, but everybody else can have theirs too.
Okay.
And the fact is that trans people transitioning is supported by all the evidence.
You keep saying that, but you're never giving me like evidence. You're just saying that.
So if you go to Google Scholar and search trans youth, every single article that pops up is in support. It's safe. It improves mental health outcomes. It improves quality of life outcomes. Every single one. I linked them in the library section of my Discord. Every single one is there.
Okay. Well,
I think put screenshots. I put links.
Bullshit. I think that's absolutely bullshit. I think anybody. You said earlier that did puberty blockers are like, oh, the evidence says that they're safe. That is absolutely horseshit. Like, that's insane.
Yes.
Like the fact you're saying that, like whatever abstract you read, you didn't read the full abstract.
I read the full abstract. I didn't read the full article because it was like $50. And so I couldn't go through the methodology to say, oh, I think your methodology might be fucked up. And also, every drug that you take has side effects. There is some toxic element of every drug. Whenever we take medication, a doctor is balancing what's the pro and what's the con. Like cancer treatment is toxic. It's bad for you, but we're fighting cancer. So we are prioritizing certain positives and the negatives go along with it. In terms of puberty blockers, short-term studies show that they're safe. They're used in the short term. And so doctors recommend utilizing them.
Nobody's concerned about
in order to prevent the development of secondary sex characteristics,
which is
irreversible.
Yeah, that is.
Say again.
That is a harm, and also nobody cares about the short term. Obviously, in short term,
there are harms involved in cancer treatment as well.
Okay,
there's harms involved in taking Advil.
I don't think that gender dysphoria is comparable to cancer.
Any medicine you take has got a toxic element to it, and so dosage is important, duration is important, and also you really carefully need to measure what's the benefit and what's the harm. Is it worth it? Your doctor recommends it, but then you still ultimately make your own choice.
Someone in my chat said that you don't have the argument to make that you don't have the argument to make everyone agree with you, but you can win with rhetoric. Because you're not really
like I can win with rhetoric.
Yeah, you just keep telling me what I think, but incorrectly. You keep telling me I think that trans people shouldn't exist. Shit like that. It's completely false.
You're saying they shouldn't transition. It would be better if they have no gender.
You also keep like alluding to like people that are saying that all trans people are predators and stuff. And that's absolutely something I would fight against.
Common.
Yeah, and so so you're saying that like me disagreeing with trans people about how we should treat people with mental health conditions and how we should do studies and reporting. Self-reporting is not the way to handle somebody with a mental health condition as far as treatment. You telling me you're telling me that me saying that leads to people saying that trans people are predators.
You contribute to a toxic environment of transphobia with this rhetoric. You are being a tool for transphobia at the very least.
Okay.
Cis sexism, I believe, is part of this as well. The belief that it's superior to be cis.
Okay, it is.
But it's not quite that too, because you are so you are sexist.
You know why it's superior to be cis? Because to be cis, you don't have to do harmful things to your body. If it were the case that you could transition without any negative side effects, like a perfect press of the button, it would not be superior to be cis. But if you're trans, that sucks. You have dysphoria. You are miserable. It's literally
Yes.
like, yes, it's
It's
not
hard.
It's obviously
They
worse.
suffer.
Yes.
The only treatment available to them that has been shown to improve quality of life and improve mental health outcomes is that they be allowed to transition to whatever degree they feel is appropriate in conjunction with their doctor.
Okay.
And you're saying they shouldn't be allowed to do that, even though you're aware that they're suffering, that they should just suffer and they should try to get to a place mentally where they don't feel like it matters what people think of them, even though we constantly perceive others' perception of us. And we also have an inner perception of ourselves. I'm not saying that therapy isn't a part of anyone's care for their mental health. I'm also not saying that there aren't like thought patterns that are abusive to the self that need to be disrupted. I'm pretty familiar with that as someone with OCD. And I'm at a point in my own care with OCD where I'm especially a proponent of cognitive behavioral therapy, which I think is similar to what Tuna was talking about. But that doesn't mean that people shouldn't also be able to pursue transition. It doesn't mean that transition is a net negative or an evil that they're being duped into. And all the studies, and I know that's annoying for you that I say that, but legitimately all the studies that I read, and you can go look at them in the library text chat at the bottom of my Discord, they all were proponents of this view that this is what we have right now, and it isn't perfect. And the suicidality rate does rise at certain points in your life, and I think that indicates to me, obviously, we haven't solved the problem. So we have to continuously provide care to people, and we have to work on the toxic environment that exists around their mere existence.
Okay.
We need to be
more loving and accepting. Environment. Yeah, but the toxic environment.
This is part of the toxic environment.
We are defining the toxic environment differently. I'm saying the toxic environment makes them trans. You're saying the toxic environment, is anybody that says that it is. Okay. Why? Okay, let me get back to what I was going to say. Why is it okay for you to interpret data, but it's not okay for me to do it? Because if I interpret data and I interpret it differently than the abstract does, then that means that I am like anti-science or something. But you can what you just did was because I believe that in this certain points, like it's okay for you to do it if you're doing it in a way that like placates or agrees with like whatever trans people say about themselves.
I don't think that I have the academic, psychological, or psychiatric knowledge to reinterpret the methodology of a study and say, you guys fucked this up. I just don't. I'm not that at that level.
I don't think they fucked it up.
I don't think you do either.
Okay, I think that it's fucked it up.
I think that you can, though, as a layman, read through an academic study and say, this seems like a flawed methodology. You can write to the article and say, okay, I have concerns about this. You can Google the methodology yourself and do independent research. But I think like the fact is that these are like thrice peer reviewed. These aren't just standing it like on nothing. Like there are lots of really, really smart, dedicated people who are dedicating their lives to this, who obviously we don't trust them, blindly, but like you probably shouldn't go with like me as a layman, I know better.
Okay. I don't distrust the peer review process that leads to these papers, and I don't distrust the scientists. I think, and also in the scientific community, like we were saying earlier, there is two different communities. There is the gender community, like the social sciences community, and then there is the scientific community. And there is no, in the scientific community agrees with me that the self-reporting is not a completely like it's not something to like tie your horse to.
I've agreed with you on that as well. And it's not just self-reporting that supports transitioning as the appropriate treatment that we have for gender dysphoria. It isn't just
the lion's share of it is. Well, the lion's share of
and
it is.
despite the fact that self-reporting isn't ideal, it is still used in plenty of disciplines.
Right. Yeah, because like
It
but
still does
speaks
contribute to our body of knowledge, and we take it with a grain of salt. We understand what it is.
Yes, it's useful in certain contexts, but not in the context of treating a psychiatric patient who believes something about themselves. Like so if you use
it is very
self-reporting,
common in psychology.
if you use self-reporting to analyze your treatment of people with anorexia, then
we do.
And that again, so if that is the bedrock of your analysis, then you're going to end up with like advocating for like anorexic people to get like wired mouth shut. Like,
true. That's not
true.
true.
Yeah, it is true.
No,
the actual bedrock. So the actual bedrock
we
of
do
the
use self-reporting, and
the actual.
we evaluate outcomes.
You keep interrupting me. Like the actual bedrock is
I'll let
actually.
the man talk.
Thank you for letting the man talk for one moment. The actual bedrock of
as if you haven't been talking, Smith. You have like a disproportionate assessment of how long you've been talking.
I don't know if I've been talking more or not, but you keep every time I make a point, you try to bring up something, the actual bedrock.
And every time I talk, you rush to talk over me like you're afraid what I'm going to say. Or are you afraid that you're going to forget what you were going to say?
Yes. I think that's because you the actual bedrock of trying to of studies, research on trying to help people with anorexia is to make them not have anorexia anymore. That is the goal. Okay. And if you can't make them not have anorexia, you make them put up with it and eat. You have to just make them eat, even if they don't want to. You just make them so
that
they
outcome
live.
Is
you force them
when
to
you
eat.
force feed them. The outcomes with force feeding are pretty bad. And so it's not the ideal treatment. It's like
I'm not saying
last ditch effort when they're like about to die is when you force feed, because it damages client-patient relationship.
Okay, I get it. Okay, so you with the goal you have in mind with anorexic people is you don't want them to be anorexic, and if you can't make them not be anorexic, you can't cure their anorexia. You make them learn to cope with it, or if you literally can't do anything else, then you force feed them. Now that is how we treat something like anorexia. That is how we treat something like, I don't know, any other psychological disorder. But in the case of gender dysphoria, okay, except for gender dysphoria, the only counterexample. Yes, the only counterexample
are not correct, but.
Okay, well, we'll try to come up with some fantasy thing that
finish what you're saying. I'm going to be quiet. You just talk.
See, do you understand that when I try to say something and then you interrupt me to tell me I'm wrong and how that derails what I'm saying?
Well, I'm trying to correct where you're making slight mistakes, and that's usually what happens in a discussion where like we can participate. Well,
you're telling me I'm wrong, but you're not substantiating it. So tell me what other case. Okay, so
I told you that in the case of force feeding, it actually damages.
That's not what I was talking about. Yeah, I agree with that. Yeah, I agree with that. That has nothing to do with what I was saying. I agree.
Usually when I'm like
it's a last resort, I agree.
I'm trying to like add to what you're saying in a way that might disagree or agree, but is illuminating a facet of the conversation that you are not.
The thing that I took issue with, like, so that didn't disagree with me at all. The thing that I took issue with was me saying that the only case where we don't treat so the goal of anorexia, you don't want them to have it, or you have to learn to cope, or last resort you force feed them, you do whatever you can to make them stay alive. In the case of gender dysphoria, we do not want to because if your goal is the same for every other mental health condition.
To alleviate the experience of dysphoria with transition.
That's not what I was going to say. Please do not put words in my mouth before I say them. So just like every other mental health condition with gender, if the goal is just like every other mental health to make them not have gender dysphoria, now you're saying you're erasing their existence. That's how you should treat mental health conditions. And then learning coping mechanisms, or literally if you can't do anything else except kill yourself, put you in a padded room to keep you from killing yourself. We don't, because like it would be incredibly unethical for our solution to anorexia to be to aid somebody in being anorexic because it'll keep them from being suicidal. If it comes to it, we literally force feed them, or we like put them in a padded room so that they cannot kill themselves.
And it would be incredibly unethical in our treatment of trans people to tell them that they can't access transition.
No, it
even
wouldn't.
though they're suffering from such a high suicidality rate. And we know that this treatment can help ameliorate those experiences.
So we know that like letting anorexic
Also, can
people
I
starve
speak a
themselves.
little bit about anorexia?
So do you
Because
think that it would
your
be unethical?
understanding of the treatment can be supported by some things that I do know as well from my research.
Do you think that anorexia? Do you think it would be unethical to treat anorexia by telling anorexic people that they are not allowed to starve themselves?
The way that we treat anorexia is not to tell people that they can't starve themselves. It's actually to talk to them about what they're going through. Part of what we do too is to make sure that they're not around other people who are anorexic, because they will conspire together and engage in continual self-abusive behaviors when they're together. So that can be a problem with treatment of anorexic people when, for example, you put them all in a clinic together. There's lots of different elements of anorexia that are complicated. But what we don't do is right off the bat force feed them, tell them they're crazy and delusional.
I don't think
a lot of it is learning how to work with these people where they're at and help them through the process of detangling. What are the root causes of this? How do we help you how do we just do harm reduction? Also, self-reporting is a big part of how we evaluate anorexia and trends over time, and what treatments have been effective, what are the comorbidities with anorexia, what things might be contributing to it, what positives do anorexic people see in their anorexia, and why it might be hard for them to let it go. A lot of anorexic people self-report that they see their anorexia as a friend. It makes them feel safe. Yes. It helps them gain a sense of control over their lives when they have felt out of control. So that self-reporting is valuable, even in an experience of a person with anorexia who you might consider delusional because of their body dysmorphia.
Okay, but so that's perfect. Okay, I agree with everything about how we treat anorexia. In the case of self-reporting, it tells us how they feel about it. So when we get their reports that it makes them feel safe, our conclusion isn't to we don't conclude that
but then we just understand
starving
better,
them.
The mechanism.
So our conclusion isn't that anorexia makes them more safe because they said it makes them feel more safe, which is the way that we are evaluating our self-reporting when it comes to gender dysphoria. We're saying, oh, well, changing your body, taking hormones, doing these things that make your life a living hell, going through puberty a second time, all of this shit that sucks, that makes you feel better. So let's let you do it. No, it's literally the same. Of course it makes them feel better.
So the self-reporting that goes on with gender dysphoria post-transition or during it, I'm not super familiar with. I've done more of the research into anorexia. The articles on anorexia were free, and I was able to read them totally and understand the methodology to the best of my ability as a layman. But I'm going to assume that the self-reporting of trans people is valid to a degree, the same sort of degree that we would understand any kind of self-reporting that has of someone with suffering from a mental illness. But there are other ways for us to measure outcomes too. It's, for example, with anorexia, part of measuring outcomes and treatment efficacy is also, did you die? It's what's your body weight? How are you doing, basically? So self-reporting is part of an evaluation of treatment and aftercare. There are also actual things about the body that we measure as well as whether you're alive. And those measurements exist too for trans people in the wake of transition. And I think it was brought up to me, and I haven't read this study, so I don't know personally, but that trans people do continue to suffer from high suicidality. That it isn't, you are not perfected because you went through transition. And it can be harmful for you to believe that you're going to go into your transition is going to fix all of your problems. So there should be some amount of management of expectations that your doctor is going through with you. And there should be continual therapy. There should be a continual payment of attention to your state of mind, your mental health, even after transition. It's not a cure-all, but it is effective treatment that shouldn't be discounted. It should, yeah.
The management of expectations you're talking about goes against their self-reporting. because the trans people, lo and behold, want to change their sex. So they're managing, like they all, just like someone who's anorexic believes they're going to be happier and it's their friend that they're anorexic and they'll be happier if they starve themselves. Trans people think they will be happier if they change their sex. So it's literally like, and we don't treat the self-reporting the same. We treat their whatever they say about themselves. In the case of gender dysphoria, we treat as a fact, as if like they are accurately like transcribing like some scientific fact about their actual state. Where in the case of anorexia, when they say that they think that it's their friend and it's good for them and makes them happy, we take that as they think that it's their friend and it makes them happy. We don't take that as it actually is their friend and it actually makes them happy.
I think the crux of your assessment that transition isn't appropriate is your belief that they would be happy if they didn't transition, and that they're less happy after transition. That you believe that their dysphoria would desist.
I don't.
And
think,
so
I
I want
possible, but I
to
don't
talk to you about.
I don't wait. Hold on. That's not what I think.
Different. Okay, but I'm just going to say this, and then you
Okay.
can tell me I'm wrong. There are different metrics you need to meet to access transition. Your doctor is going to diagnose you, and then he or she is also going to evaluate your physical symptoms, your mental symptoms, whether they are consistent, persistent, whether it appears like this is a problem that we can best solve with transition. So,
well, I don't
it
think.
appears to me like you're concerned that doctors aren't properly diagnosing people and they aren't properly gatekeeping, and that they are rushing people through transition inappropriately, because I don't know why you think, but
Okay.
I wanted to just say, like, there are criteria that need to be met for transition.
Okay. That's good. I don't think like fundamentally I already said I think that it's like the treatment itself, it might make some people actually happier. Especially I think now this is not science. Like, so I've been wary of this kind of thing. I think that if you're trans, you want to pass, okay? And I think anybody that says otherwise is deluded. And I think that your likelihood of passing increases greatly the earlier you transition or the more money you have. If you're really rich and you start off when you're 14, you're going to look like a beautiful woman, or you're going to look like Arnold Schwarzenegger, or whatever you want to. But if you start later in life, so I think that the outcome that people want is so far out of reach, and I think that we are telling people that it is like a cure-all, and that I don't think we are like letting people like gauge their expectations appropriately, especially because the thing that they want is to transition, and the thing that they think will solve their problems is to transition. So I think that in order to even gauge their gauge their expectations appropriately, they would have to be less dysphoric to be able to appropriately gauge their expectations. They're fundamentally unable to gauge those to like an appropriate extent. They're not the right person to ask.
They aren't the only person that gets asked. They're doing this in conjunction with a doctor, and they go through a process of evaluation, which is supported by academia and medical science.
Yeah, but if you say anything like, if we rely on their self-reporting as gospel as a fact for actually what their fact of their matter is, which is different from any other psychological condition, which is absolutely what we do with this condition. It's, if you point that out, then you are saying that they shouldn't exist. Or
I don't know why you're not hearing me. Like, I never said that we use self-reporting as gospel, or that's the only metric by which we evaluate the outcomes for trans people.
You are not saying that that's the only metric by which we evaluate or that it's gospel. I am saying that we treat it as gospel. I am literally saying we treat it as gospel, and that it's if the self-reporting for gender dysphoria is treated differently than the self-reporting for any other mental condition, where we don't say that like for anorexia that it like they'll report that as their friend and it makes them happier, it makes them feel like they have control of their life. When trans people say the same things, we don't treat that as a report of how they experience themselves. We treat that as if no, it actually makes them happier to change their body. It actually makes them feel like they have control of their life. It actually makes they actually think it's their friend. Like we don't do.
Your mental state and your physical state actually deteriorates as you descend into further and further anorexia. You don't feel better. When they were in the specific study I'm talking about, they were asked to write a letter to their anorexia, and in those letters we evaluated feelings of friendliness with the anorexia, like it was a caregiver. But it's not that engaging in anorexic behaviors makes them feel better mentally or physically in any real sense. So we're evaluating in those letters what are some of the things that keep them clinging on, but that doesn't mean that delving deeper into anorexia is actually making them feel better. It's actually like causing what are symptoms of starvation.
Okay. Well, I think that the gender affirming care is nowhere near as immediately dangerous to your physical health. I think that it is extremely dangerous to your mental health, and I like you're literally changing your body chemistry. I took hormones I took like do it yourself hormones for like a week. It made me incredibly depressed. That doesn't mean anything about like the hormones these actual people are taking. But I don't think like there is no reason that you should think that changing your body chemistry in such an extreme way, literally like the way you think changes. Like that destabilizes your life. That destabilizes like your all of your coping mechanisms for everything else in your life are now destabilized. It's like I've gone on so many Tinder dates with trans men that have just started taking testosterone, and they are like complaining and like they're like destabilized. They're completely destabilized. They're like super horny and they're like ravenously hungry all of a sudden. They don't know how to deal with being horny, and they're making like they're just going on like hooking up with me on like in the middle of like a park like an autobahn all alone like they're making irresponsible decisions. Like it's just completely there
are side effects.
Yeah, and
you have to decide as an individual whether it's what you need. And it's okay either way. And it's also okay to decide that you want to detransition or you want to just stop treatment. It's okay to acknowledge that there are side effects.
Yes, but what I'm saying is the positive effects. So like in the same way with anorexia, with starving yourself, there are all negative effects, and the positive effects are all in the eyes of the person with anorexia and in no one else's eyes. The same is exactly the case with gender dysphoria. There are only negative effects, and the things that we are calling positives are really like literally only positives in the same way that starving yourself with anorexia is a positive.
No, there is the positive that for those people who decide to pursue that care, that we can see that it improves quality of life and mental health outcomes. So that's measurable. It has been measured.
No, but like
it's not perfect. It doesn't necessarily persist throughout their entire lifetime. There's other forms of care that need to be pursued as well. It's a serious condition. It should be taken seriously. We haven't fixed it, but this is the care that we have available, and some people are deciding to take advantage of it, and that's their decision, and it's backed by science. But that doesn't mean that that's going to be the decision everybody makes, and everybody's transition is different. Also, I have already said this, so forgive me if it's going to be a bit annoying, but when you're taking medication, sometimes it doesn't feel good. Sometimes there's a payoff later down the road. And I know you don't like the comparison between cancer and having gender dysphoria. I don't mean to say they're the same thing, but I do mean to say like there are big drawbacks to something like chemotherapy. There's a lot of pain associated with surgery. There's symptoms, for example, of taking steroids too. I remember I had to be on what is it called? It's a specific steroid I had to take, and I had to take it orally, which meant it was systemic, and it made me angry and resentful and unpleasant, and it made my skin feel hot and itchy. It made me just not like being awake, but I had to take it because my whole body was swollen with hives, and I love that this fly is talking to me. But so yeah, just because something is giving you side effects doesn't mean that it's inappropriate for you. You have to decide after self-reflection, after talking to your doctor, after really spending time with this and maybe starting and stopping, reconsidering whether this is what you want to do, whether it's right for you. It should be something done with consideration. I knew a woman in college who is now a man, and she was telling me that she stopped taking testosterone because, or she knew someone who was living with her who stopped taking testosterone because it made him an inconsiderate asshole, and he didn't want to be like that anymore. But then years down the line, this friend who was telling me that she had decided not to transition because someone else had a bad experience with testosterone, he fully transitioned and happy. He took his time evaluating, is this right for me? And so, yeah, studies show this, but at the end of the day, it's an individual decision that I support people make. It isn't really my business.
I think that if you have a mental health condition where you hate your body and you want to change it, I think that like with every other, I believe it's the standard of care for every other mental health condition not to agree with what you say about yourself and give you.
That's not true because we agree with people with dementia. We don't call attention to their dementia.
Dementia? Let me think about that. I don't think that's true. I don't know. No. Like yeah, you do that because can you hear me?
There's lots of different. Oh, you're frozen.
All right,
yeah, we
back.
don't experience. Oh, it's kind of coming in and out. I could hear you like you said that we don't do that with dementia patients.
Yeah, we only do that.
But
like,
I
worked
have
in a nursing
cared
home.
for a dementia patient.
Me too.
Oh, you did. That's true.
I worked in a nursing home. You do that like if you're. My experience was you do that if you're an asshole and you don't care about them and you want to get them out of the way. So it's more
distressing for them to constantly be like, "You're not in Alabama. I'm not your son." Like, no, it's the afternoon. Like to just to have like a pissy attitude, like needing to disrupt everything they say and tell them they're wrong all the time. It's just not the best thing for their experience in that social interaction. You're going to create more distress.
Okay,
that they don't need to experience.
That might be the case, but that's not like so. But you're not like giving them like so. Say that like, a person with dementia believes that they.
And I'm specifically talking about you don't give dementia,
you don't give people with dementia like if you have Alzheimer's dementia or something, you don't give them like gender transition. You don't give them
you're not constantly telling them they're like crazy, and
I don't want to constantly tell trans people that they're crazy. I believe that they have dysphoria, and I believe that they have it for a reason, and I think it's completely valid. Like the difference between gender affirming care and treatment for cancer is that in gender affirming care, there are we're
trying to save someone's life in gender affirming care, and the same way we're trying to save someone's life with cancer.
I don't agree with that. I think that in gender affirming care,
it's distinct. You're right that it's different, but at the end of the day, someone's life is on the line.
Sure. But the difference is that in gender affirming care, there are only negative side effects that are objective, and the only positive effects are completely subjective and completely subjective to the perspective of the person with the mental health disorder and in nobody else's perspective. And so like that is the only time we treat any type of mental health disorder in that way. And in the cancer, there is the objective benefit of trying to get rid of or make your cancer not grow more, which is objective to everybody.
There are measurable positive outcomes of affirmative care, but since you don't think that that's true, do you have an alternative prescription if you're saying we should not be transitioning, aside from your gender abolitionist idea, which is untenable?
Okay, that is the societal one, but in the personal one, I am not I think that gender affirming care reinforces the things that make people dysphoric. I also think there are probably, I know this for a fact, like with trans men that I've dated, that what you described happening with anorexia, of them like conspiring together and making it worse for each other, absolutely happens with people encouraging each other to transition and stuff. I think it's exactly the same situation happens. My alternative.
No, they're encouraging each other to seek care. It would be harmful.
You could say the same. Yeah, but you could encouraging
each other. Oh, here is an example of trans people conspiring and making their condition worse. ContraPoints talked about a forum that exists where they go and post pictures of themselves purposely to get feedback that they are ugly, that they would never pass if they went through affirmative care, even though they really, really want it, and to tell them they will never be happy and to just stay what they are. And that's an example of people with a specific mental illness conspiring together and just spreading this negative mentality that doesn't help anyone, that isn't true, that like is just based on this gripping fear that they would never be accepted, never loved as they want to be, that their goals are unachievable, that there's no hope for them.
Yeah, like I don't think that telling trans people with dysphoria that they're ugly or that they're delusional, like you treat them like the way that I would treat them in like a therapist office. You give them acceptance, you give them space. I think they also probably not like I think there's a lot of reasons to end up dysphoric, but there are probably people in their lives that don't love them for who they are, and they are being repressed, and they feel like they will be able to scrape that oppression by changing who they are, because the people in their lives will finally accept them. And maybe that's just baked in.
That's not what causes dysphoria.
That is one thing that absolutely can cause dysphoria.
Dysphoria is the experience of not identifying with your gender.
Right.
And feeling strongly that you are the other gender. It's not feeling like your dad wishes you were the other gender, so you want to transition
you don't feel
for
that.
him.
You don't feel that. No, you don't feel that. No, you feel that you are the wrong gender. You feel like there's something wrong with you because nobody in your life loved you for who you are. You're a man and you just wanted to wear dresses, and you were humiliated for that want, and you feel like there's something wrong with you, and the only way for people to magically love you and accept you for who you are, that becomes caked into how you actually perceive your own gender, and you think that the escape is becoming another gender. Like that is one way that could become baked in. And I think that a big part of like treatment, I think it's possible that you could never be able to overcome that, but I don't think it's possible that you could never learn coping mechanisms. And I think that it is possible that it could go away, but it's not a guarantee. But
you don't have any evidence that is the mechanism by which dysphoria occurs.
No, but that is a theory of one way that dysphoria could manifest in somebody. And I think that if you don't think that that's true, I think that is self-evident that is a possibility for how you could develop dysphoria. And I would need like a reason why that like I think that like there's many reasons you could be dysphoric, and that is one very good reason.
okay, accepted as you are. Maybe you would just be a cross-dresser, but because you feel like you need to conform as one gender, now you think you're trans. So then what is your prescription for those people who are experiencing gender dysphoria, I guess, in your example? Even though to me that doesn't seem like gender dysphoria, that seems like struggling with the fact that you weren't loved in childhood, which doesn't necessarily amount to dysphoria. But okay, your example is someone was made trans because they weren't loved as they are, because they were a crossdresser. And so then they feel like, I must be a woman. So what is your treatment for that person?
They never even believed that they were a cross-dresser. They just believed they were a woman because, like, men don't wear dresses. Men have to, like, let's say, I could paint you a beautiful picture. Like, let's say that you have a dad that works on an oil rig and he like snorts and he hawks up loogies. And if you like pretty things and you like being gentle and you take after your mom more, then your whole family, including your mom, doesn't accept you for that. Your mom and your dad both only accept you if you are like hulkish and brutish, like they expect men to be. Like all these types of things. You're like, I'm not a man. I am a woman. I think that is like 100% a way that can become like your identity is, I'm not a man. No, I don't want to be that. I hate that. I hate men. I hate myself. I'm a woman. I mean, I've observed that exact.
Okay, but then what's your prescription for those people since you don't want them to transition?
Right. Okay. So I think that in that case, to like they have been harmed, and to let them transition is let them to continue to harm themselves, and their hatred for themselves as they are is self-hatred. I think that you're playing into their self-hatred by letting them transition, and I don't think that's a cure for anything. I think it might make them think that they're happier, but I think it actually contributes to their self-loathing, and it will make them more miserable. So in that case, I think that they need to be separated from these people in their lives that are making them feel miserable, and they need to be validated and surrounded by people who actually love them.
Okay, here's my response to that. If someone were legitimately in a scenario where they are not accepted for who they are, they're simply gender nonconforming, they're not trans, they're not actually dysphoric, they might have some symptoms, but it doesn't rise to the level of like necessitating medical transition, then there's the possibility that talk therapy and a change in environment could be more beneficial to them. I think any reasonable doctor would assess that situation, would work towards helping that person get in a better, healthier environment in order to address their mental health conditions. But if it were the case that they legitimately have gender dysphoria outside of any environmental factors, they might pursue transition as well. But I think that if the problem really is environmental, if the problem really is able to be ameliorated without transition, they would pursue that course of action.
Yeah, I think I do think it's always environmental, but I don't think that means it can always be ameliorated.
Why do you think it is always environmental when you don't have the evidence?
Because there is because when I say it's environmental, I am standing on like a massive foundation of science and psychology, where when you say that you were born with a gender, you are making a claim that needs a massive amount of substantiation, and every time they try to prove that, they come up empty-handed because it's absolutely bullshit. There is no such thing as a gendered brain. There is no such thing as anybody born with any identity. Identity is something that we learn. It is not something you're born with.
So you have a bar for evidence that gender is innate. Yeah. In the mental sense that you feel isn't being met academically, scientifically. But why does that necessitate that you be so hardcore over here that it's all social, that it's all abuse and lack of acceptance that creates dysphoria, that there's nothing innate about that experience? Because it feels a lot like that you had a personal experience and that you're not open to the fact that other people could have a different experience of being trans. Could have had different mechanisms on their lives.
Because trans people, dysphoria is a mode of hating yourself. And I don't think you hate yourself for no reason. I think you hate yourself because of your environment. You learned. I don't think you're born to hate yourself. I think you learn to hate yourself. I don't think it's possible to be born to hate yourself.
I don't want to offend you, but I just feel like that's you being mired in your perspective.
Mired?
Like stuck.
That's not offensive. That's the least offensive thing I said. And by the way, I hope we're still gonna be friends out of this, because like I know we're like.
Well, yes,
Okay.
I would like to be, and I don't want to hurt you.
We're both comfortable with being aggressive.
I'm antagonistic and I'm disagreeable, and
Good.
I'm passionate about this topic because there's trans youth in my family, and lots of my friends are trans, and I love them. And
I love them too. I have a lot of trans friends, and I love them. I'm so grateful that I have trans friends that allow me to disagree. Like I just don't think, like, you can say that you can say, and I can't really disagree, that you disagree with my beliefs and you think that they're wrong, they're harmful, that they're anti-scientific. I don't think that they're anti-scientific and everything, but I don't think I'm transphobic. Like I have my beliefs because I care about trans people. Like I actually, like, it is informed by my personal experience. And
I know.
So I'm not transphobic. I literally believe the things that I'm saying, I think, are for the benefit of trans people.
I think that it was a decision that you made in your life that was positive for you and the right thing for you. And that it could be the decision for other people who went through similar experiences as you. But it's also true that what the studies are bearing out is correct as well. That what other trans people are saying about their desire for or their experience of transition is also valid. That these perspectives don't need to occlude and exclude each other. And me saying that you're transphobic is not me saying that I don't value you as a person.
You're
or that you should be.
You're lumping me in with people that hate trans people. Like I like that
I don't
say that
want
they're all
to
predators.
do that. I don't want to do that.
Well, you do
maybe a better word for how you legitimately feel, as opposed to what I feel are some of the implications of some of your statements. Maybe the implications of some things that you have said are transphobic, and that's what I sense when you say it and what I react to. But as I was reading through Wikipedia, just the transphobia Wikipedia page, which is all I did to prepare for this, there's a section where they talk about etymology and other terms. And there's an alternative term called cis-sexism, which might be closer to how you feel. I don't know. And I really don't mean to harm you by describing you this way, but it's how I understand your views. And it's the implication of some of the things you've said. If we enacted it on a societal level, it would be transphobic, I believe.
Okay. I believe that the implication of calling me transphobic publicly, like, it's not like me, like that. I think the implication is that if you disagree with trans people, if you say anything about it, then you are transphobic. And
that is okay. That's not what I think.
I think is the implication of what you're saying.
Your transphobia to me isn't just that you disagree with trans people. It's that you have the belief that it's better to be cis. And a lot of your thinking on this revolves around the fact that we should be trying to pressure trans people to just stop it. Stop being trans.
No, absolutely not. Like you keep like weighting everything. No, like I said, like I keep agreeing like with everything you said about how we should treat people with mental health disorders. We shouldn't we should not be pressuring them to just stop being trans. No, their feelings are completely valid. They need love and acceptance. They don't need pressure. I think that there's more pressure on them to transition than anything else. Coming from themselves and from other people.
It should be a personal decision that you make after.
I don't think it should be a personal decision. Like just like I think that if you want to remove your arm, it shouldn't be a personal decision. It's like we
But
shouldn't
it's
let
not the
people do
same
it.
as removing your arm. It is not the same. It's pursuing care. And it's also pursuing the kind of life that you want to live.
Well, the same can be said about the guy removing his arm. It could pursuing care and the kind of life you want to live.
Sure, I care about that guy removing his arm, just as an aside. Like, I don't know what the treatments are for that syndrome where you're like, oh man, this shouldn't be here. That's not mine. I don't know. I know that maybe in the past they were cutting it off. I don't know what we're doing right now. I don't really care if that guy cuts off his arm if it helps him. If he isn't driven so mad by obsessive thought of it anymore that he's not able to live his life. I had to make, this was the personal thing I was going to share earlier that I didn't really feel like sharing, but I think it might be valuable. I made the decision to start taking marijuana tincture to stop my OCD when it's spiraling to the point where it's going to make me hurt myself or others. And there are proven negatives of getting high on THC, like, like all medication. But for me, it's an extremely net positive. And I had to get to a place where I was okay with the fact that like I was going to take on a negative to gain positives. And I astonished that for so long I wouldn't let myself take medication for it because I was afraid of psychiatric medication because there'd been a lot of fear mongering around psychiatric medication. People telling me that I shouldn't. There was a lot of pressure on me, actually, societally, and from family and friends and stuff, not to take medication. And I was scared. I thought it would hurt me. And I was ignoring the fact that I was hurting all the time. And I was hurting other people with how extreme my obsessive compulsive disorder was, how debilitating it was, to the point where like I lost years of my life, really, to that. And I got my life back when I started getting high, when I felt the extreme onset of an episode. So I'm like pretty familiar with the trade-off, at least in that specific instance, which is not the same as the trade-off of cutting off your arm. But I understand like how bad mental illness is. That I was suicidal often with my OCD. So I understand like that the stakes are pretty high. And that I ultimately had to be willing to do what was necessary to get better. And that wasn't like my perfect scenario. I really wanted to just snap my fingers and not have OCD anymore.
Okay, I have a personal experience I want to share. So until like a year ago, like literally like a year ago, I had never had any facial hair because I grow like under my fucking neck, my fucking neck beard grows so fast. It doesn't grow everywhere, but it grows fast where it grows. And I would always shave it literally daily. And the thought of growing it at all made me really like feel ugly. This is because I used to want to be a woman, and then I was a femboy. I was like, well, I can be a man, but I just can't be a man. I just have to be a boy, you know. And I was just, I hated myself, and I would spend hours and hours getting dressed. Like I would femme myself. Sometimes I'd do some makeup. I wasn't any good at it, but and I would spend a lot of time on my hair. Like I would do this scrunching technique, or I would put mousse in and then I would scrunch for it to like dry, then put like a little bit more mousse in. I would scrunch for like an hour, so it would get like, it would look like Einstein. But slowly, I stopped doing these things. And it was always horrifying, and I felt like I was doing some harm to myself by not doing it, but also I knew it was good for me. And when I started to learn to love myself without doing these extra things to myself to present, like spending it like an hour and a half every day getting dressed just to feel confident going outside is not a good solution to your life. The solution, the thing that's going to make my life better, is to learn not to need to spend 2 hours every day getting dressed. And when I see trans people transitioning, I see them literally making their lives, especially trans women, because the amount of things that they have to do to pass or to meet the standards of women, especially being a man, having like a male body, a male like hair that grows way faster, the amount of shaving, the amount of procedures, the amount of like surgical intervention that they're doing just to feel comfortable in their body, like. It was really hard and really scary for me to be comfortable with facial hair at all. And one of my friends forced me to do it because he told me that he would give me $1 every day for every day I didn't shave. And so then I did it for a while, and then I shaved it again for a while. But then like eventually I got lazy, and because I had done that, I was like, well, now I got lazy, and I was like, you know what? Like women are hitting on like people actually accept me when I'm like this. I didn't think that was possible, and so I didn't even know it was possible to be comfortable in my body, without changing myself and putting all this work into being somebody different. And now I'm learning how to feel sexy even just in pajamas, being sexy after eating 3 steaks or a pizza and a half. Like with a big like stomach, and that I see as the goal for self-image and mental health is acceptance, radical acceptance. And I feel like the solution for trans people is completely the opposite direction from any type of actual self-acceptance. But I think that people are being told they're transphobic if you say that, because the only type of self-acceptance that's valid is to accept them as trans, accept them as changing themselves, accept them for the makeup, accept them for getting dressed like 2 hours every day, like changing their body. Like I see that all as a massive, like women are more liberated when they don't do makeup, not when they do like make. I think it would be a horrible solution for us to solve the gender problems by having men now start wearing makeup too. Like no, like we should all just stop caring about makeup, and that's how I see it. And trans people like I did, they care so much about these things, and they feel miserable without them, and they feel like they're worthless without doing these things to change themselves. And I think that to give up on them feeling comfortable in their skin is such a massive disservice to them. I would never give up on someone like that.
I don't think it's giving up on someone to allow them to pursue transition. And I also don't think that trans women should have to wear makeup, should have to spend hours getting ready. Like in an ideal world, right? They wouldn't have to perform femininity more than I have to. But they do that to avoid some of the really, really unpleasant elements of the lack of acceptance for trans people in society. So I think they do experience some of what you're describing and what I have also gone through as a woman. I think that's partly an experience of social anxiety too, but it's also the need to conform in terms of gender so that you're accepted and you're loved and you're liked. So they need to transition because they have gender dysphoria, but then on top of that, they have to deal with what everybody also experiences, which is performance of gender.
I think it's the same.
It's not the same. I don't have gender dysphoria, but I do know what it's like to experience my leg hair negatively, and my armpit hair, and my mustache, and my crooked teeth, and zits, and my sometimes my body looks strange to me, skinny and gangly and odd.
For someone to love you as hairy and filled with pimples and zits. No, but like trans people, by doing what we're like gender affirming care, we're giving up on them ever being loved like that.
I think that we can love people pre-transition, and that we can love them post-transition. We can love them during transition, and accept that that's the care that they need, that that's a solution for them. But I also think that your journey is valid and beautiful. And that no one can take that away from you. And maybe
They could have
that,
though. They could have taken it away from me if because I tried to get the hormones in transition. I talked to a doctor. I talked to my dermatologist about it, and she was going to put me in touch with a hormone person. And she just forgot about it. I got lucky. And also my dad gave me some resistance. But had that not happened, they would have been taken away from me, because then and I believe that if I had transitioned, I would not be saying that I regret it. So just like I have some fucking weird ass, I have a tattoo that says Kami's band on my pelvis. Like I'm never going to say that I regret that, and I'm glad that I got it. I'm sure that if I didn't get it, I would also be telling you that I'm glad I didn't get it, and it would have been the right decision. And I feel the same if I started transitioning. It's because it's my body now. I have to love it. So if I start changing my body, if I started taking hormones, I'm going to do whatever I have to do to love my body, because it's my body now. And I would rather learn those coping mechanisms for learning to love myself without doing any work, without just learning to love myself with having facial hair, with having, like whatever, like without having to change myself.
the psychological evaluations that a trans person is going to undergo should be ferreting out, is this like normal body issues in it, or is this dysphoria? So ideally you would not have been shuffled along an assembly line.
I don't know. I was an adult, so I would like, if you're an adult, it's like
There's still gatekeeping for adults.
You say that you feel this way for so long. Sometimes they make you like wait. Like the amount of times they actually make you actually go to therapy, like that happens to like kids, but like it's hard to even get like when I started going to therapy, I was on a waiting list for like 6 months. And that wasn't because I didn't even have any impending thing. Like it was just like, I just need to start going to therapy because I want to try to make my life better. There was no specific thing at all.
I think there's a shortage, especially in rural areas, of psychological care, psychiatry, etc. I was on a similar waiting list.
But it's easy to give people affirmative care, though.
I do not believe that people are being shuffled along an assembly line. And I do believe that good psychologists are following a procedure for meeting criteria before they initiate gender transition. And that it's a process of going from least invasive to more invasive as you evaluate the scope of the problem and try to get the person to
that
the
sounds
best
good
place they could be.
That sounds good, but I don't think that like if that is what you think should happen, like I like that, and I think that is way better than the way I think it happens right now, where sometimes in some places it's like that, but I think in most places it's not. I don't think people get this type of psychological like a therapist or care that they should be having before that. And even if they do, there's like a trend in therapy where gender affirming therapy is the thing. So they're not even trying to make people comfortable. They're only trying to affirm their negative beliefs about themselves, or they need to change themselves. Because the desire to change yourself means you hate yourself, and it comes from a negative place. And to affirm that is to affirm a negative.
But that's different from dysphoria. So there's
why? No, dysphoria is you're dysphoric.
Shouldn't be conflated.
The word dysphoria means you like are dysphoric about your body. It's a negative.
About your gender specifically, gender dysphoria. So not the same as like body dysmorphia.
Okay.
And
but if you want to transition, then it means you have you're about body dysphoria.
It's gender dysphoria, and the body is part of that, right?
But you could just say you're the opposite gender, and it wouldn't like. So this is my theory of gender. Okay, this is why I've thought very hard about this one. This one I need a Nobel Prize.
Do you mind if I go get more water? Because I woke up with like a weird sore throat. And
okay.
Okay.
Also, I've been causing you to yell. It's absolutely my fault.
No, I yelled yesterday too. I talked to Gorp, who is a trans man Republican who thinks that trans youth should not have access to puberty blockers. So I did a lot of yelling yesterday too. All right, I'll be right back.
All right. Yeah, informed consent. What's up, Zonia? Yeah, for adults. I think we should just treat adults the same way we treat kids with this. That's the hot take.
Okay, hello.
Hello.
What were you going to tell me?
I forget. I like TERFs. TERFs really piss me off. The TERFs are transphobic. They're not even transphobic because they hate trans people. This pisses me off. They hate men. Like most TERFs. Like there's different TERFs, but I'm generalizing. But most TERFs, like say you're in a group. I've seen like Twitter spaces like this. And they like trans women come in, and these TERFs are like, you're invading our spaces, blah, blah, and they feel so offended that a man is calling himself a woman. That's what they think. And they really piss. And I mean, I get it. Like some of them have been like raped in a bathroom or something. And it's like, how am I to tell them not to feel that way? You know, like, but still, I hate that they call it, they mask it as transphobic. They just hate men. But when a trans man comes in, that was born with a vagina, then their empathy level goes way up.
Yeah.
But I feel that way about both. I feel like when the TERFs are talking to a trans man, they're like this, like, you have been wronged. We want to help you. We accept you. And that's how I feel about all trans people. And I don't hate them. And I think they need a lot of acceptance.
Yeah, and I think that there should be acceptance of them pursuing affirmative care. I wanted to apologize to you. Yesterday, you shared with me, no, the day before yesterday, you shared with me your experience of rape by coercion. And I said things that people have said to me when I shared stories of rape. I said, like, you should have said no. I said, like, I denied that it was rape. And I thought about it for a long time afterwards, and I felt really remorseful. And I'm sorry.
It's okay.
But I've been meaning to tell you that. I was like trying not to forget to tell you that.
Well, you told me that you were impassioned because of what you're talking about now.
Yeah. Yeah.
Because the implication of what I was saying you felt was transphobic.
Right. But I think it's probably transphobic to just not accept that they...
What I was saying then, just because this is live, I was saying that I had sex with a trans person I didn't know was trans until like a couple hours before we started having sex. It wasn't very long of a sexual encounter. Like I felt uncomfortable, so I ended up ending it, but I didn't want to even go into it, and I felt like I had to act like I was okay with it. And I've had sex with actual trans people like that. Like actual trans people. Trans people I knew were trans. But like in this case, I was just blindsided. I was uncomfortable with this situation and like really know like who they were, and it left me feeling kind of violated. And is the more I've thought about it, the more I don't like that experience. And I was saying that like also, so I was just saying that's think it's rape if you don't inform your partners like that you're trans before you have sex.
Well, it's rape by coercion to omit details you know would be deal breakers, or to lie in order to coerce that person into sex. And I didn't know that. And Testicle Johnson shared the link with me in chat and educated me literally live.
Fucking name.
You like Testicle Johnson?
The name. I just like.
You know his icon?
No.
It's a squirrel with big nuts hanging, and they're super visible. Yeah, so that was your experience, and I'm sorry that I
since that stream. It's okay. Don't whatever. Like you are a rare person. Not that rare, but you're able to like, the fact that we're able to have this conversation. I mean, now we're being all nice to each other, but the fact that we're able to have this conversation means a lot to me because I value. That's why I'm a fucking Mr. Girl fan or whatever, because he's the same way. He values like high conflict like relationships, and like I'm comfortable fighting with you about this. I'm comfortable fighting with you about if I'm transphobic live.
Yeah, that was pretty neat of you. That was neat of you. I appreciate that. Yeah, I used to think there was something wrong with me, that I was pretty comfortable with having disputes like this. And then I would be like, why is everybody mad at me? Why don't people like me? And I learned like, oh, it's just not acceptable social behavior to be like antagonistic to that degree. It's socially damaging to people for you to call them out, disagree with them, even if they're wrong. So they experience you as a negative, so they're going to experience you as an enemy.
No.
Those now
people,
I understand the behavior.
No, those people are absolutely, completely. I just like throwing out ad homs sometimes. I don't know, like it's a habit. I notice it every time, but those people have their fucking head in their ass. Okay, what you have to do if people are calling you transphobic isn't to like sure you can deny it, but don't like hide it. Like fucking like where like if I am transphobic, the best thing to do would be to talk about it. And if I'm not transphobic, the best thing to do would be to talk about it. And like no matter what. So
yeah. Testicle Johnson earlier in the chat was like, I don't think Smeth is transphobic. Please don't ban me, which is ironic because he's a mod. But I mean, I do still think that the implications of many of your assumptions and assertions are transphobic. It might fall more neatly into cis sexism. There might be a different distinct term, but it doesn't mean that you hate trans people or you're a cruel, evil bastard.
I really do just disagree with trans
You've had
people.
a personal experience, Smith, that has deeply affected you.
Okay, so all I can know is my personal experience. I know that if I had self-reported any time during that, or if I had started transitioning, I would have told you something completely different that you would say is not transphobic. And if I had, but like I just like so that is real to me, and I know that I was completely capable of telling you the exact opposite thing at many points along those lines. So I need to like I see no evidence that proves to me that is not the case for every person that's gender dysphoric.
There's this is a psychological fallacy that your experience maps onto other people's experience of similar looking things. I think it's projection, but it's also like, that's why I said mired in your own perspective. Like, it's hard for us to really fully conceptualize how different other people's experiences and minds are. Like, we just can't know. There is no way for me to know you like that, Smith. Like, I can talk to you about your experiences, but kind of what I'm doing is taking my own experiences and mapping them onto what I think you're saying. You know what? Like, there's a barrier between us.
I hate this. I gotta tell you why, but I'm just saying it so you can just, I'll shut up and then you can continue, but I need to say
No,
it.
I'm done.
Okay.
I'm done.
I'm sorry, I interrupted you. Whatever, fuck you. I think that I hate that argument so much. I hate that whole projection argument because it's as a matter of fact, projection and empathy are literally the two sides of the same coin. So like you're dismissing
Yes.
the ability to empathize
Yes.
with anybody at all. Like so like we
No,
have
but I'm
to
saying
try.
it's limited.
Sure, like of course it's limited. Like it's always limited, but I'm doing my best. And I don't think we are all so different. I think we're actually more alike than we are different. Most people have more in common than they have like than in actual like the things that are different are the things we focus on, but we actually all have a lot in common. And I don't think that people have like radically different brains. We do have different brains, but we're not like, if we were radically different, we'd be aliens. We're all human beings. And I know for a fact, okay, I'm not saying that I'm assuming necessarily. I am assuming, but I'm not just relying on this assumption that other people have the same experience with gender that I do. I also don't see any evidence that like the way that we report their level of happiness or satisfaction, first of all, is not the standard for any other mental health disorder. And I also recognize that if I was in their position in my past, I would have said the same things. And so I would have given the same data. And I don't see any evidence to convince me that their experience is actually something completely different from my own. And I see evidence that does suggest that it is the same as my own.
Eli has contested the concept of empathy as being like the other side of projection or tandem with projection, and said it's the opposite, and that empathy really should be understanding how others feel, not assuming that they feel the way that you do.
No, that's not, he doesn't get what I'm saying, because the empathy is to put yourself in someone else's shoes. You only can know your own experience, and you can only know the way you feel about things. So let's say that you tell me that tinfoil terrifies you. How do I empathize with you being terrified of tinfoil? Because I'm not terrified of tinfoil. What I do is I take my experience of being terrified, maybe by, I remember being terrified of being in the dark when I was a little kid. I remember one time I was in the dark and I saw a glow-in-the-dark mask that I didn't know was in my room. So I saw this glowing face in the corner of my room for no reason, and I was freaking out. And I was scared stiff, and I ran out to my parents' room. Like I ran past it like bravely after hours of staring at it, and I ran to their room. That was terror. And I can say, well, that is the experience of terror. And to some degree, you had that experience with tinfoil. Maybe the way that your brain experiences terror and processes it is sort of different, and I need to recognize that. But it's still terror, and I can still try to take my experiences of terror and project them onto you. Like, that's literally the only way that I can put myself into your shoes, is to project my experiences into them. And the more that we learn about ourselves, and the more we learn about ourselves, the easier it is to empathize and relate to other people, and the more that we're able to understand other people.
I think that projection that you're talking about is different from the psychological concept of projection.
It's I think
like you're extending a bit of your own experience to try to understand why tinfoil scares that person. But you're also doing mirror neurons by seeing them, right? There's I don't know fully everything that goes on in empathy, and it would be actually a fun thing for me to get a book on and read about. But there is a lot in other people's experiences that we only know through their descriptions. And some people are so radically different that they don't know. They can't know what it's like for like the vast majority of people. Like, so trans people are a minority of the population who experience gender dysphoria. And I can't know what that experience is like. I have to believe them when they tell me what it's like.
Why?
Because I don't have that psychological makeup. So I empathize, but I can never truly know.
I don't think that's empathy.
I have to rely on essentially their self-report to me. This is what I'm experiencing. This is what it's like. There's some things in my own life that I use to try to cobble together an empathetic response and experience to, but I'll never truly know what it's like to be trans. I'll never know what gender dysphoria is like. I'll know what it's like to perform femininity, and I can try to say, oh, here's some comparisons. It's not the same thing, though.
This is the conversation I would. You're obviously not the trans person that would need to do this, and I don't think it's possible. But, the thing that would change my mind is for somebody with gender dysphoria who is able to explain it to me in a way where I'm taking, like, they're explaining it into terms that I understand because of my experiences, and they're able to help me map on different experiences I've had in a way that makes it make sense to me. And in any possible way that I can map myself onto it, which I think are completely rational and make perfect sense, and I can map myself onto it in multiple ways. Because I experienced it in multiple dimensions. Like, it wasn't like one thing. Like, it was autogynephilia is part of it. Like hating myself because of like the way people treated me. The social, like, fear of the future, and fear of changes, and wanting to, like, there was a lot of things that went into me hating being a man and wanting to be a woman, and I can map all those on to people with dysphoria. And there's no way that I can map any experience, like, of anything onto it that makes me feel like I don't like, I don't know. Like, I don't think it, I just think that I'm able to map onto and empathize with it in so many different ways. And I think that all these ways are valid to be dysphoric. It doesn't mean you're not dysphoric because I can map onto it. I think I was dysphoric, and I don't know. If you can show me a new way to map onto it that makes me think that gender affirming care is the right solution. But I just think it's a philosophical difference, though. I don't think I'm inaccurately understanding dysphoria or empathizing with them. I just philosophically think that we shouldn't do it. We shouldn't do gender affirming care unless we're like, there's literally like nothing else you could possibly do. It's like force feeding.
Gender affirming care wasn't right for you. You desisted if you had real dysphoria. But I think looking for some trans person to explain it in a way to you that you can finally understand is kind of unreasonable. I think what you should be looking to do is seeking to understand it yourself. And
no, that's what
you
I'm
would
saying.
be best equipped to do that. Not without someone else having to explain it to you, but like just delving into what are the sites of resistance that you have with it? What are the blockages? What are like the underlying assumptions that inform your belief? And
what do you think that I'm getting wrong?
I think you're getting wrong that there can only be your experience.
No, yeah, but what is it like? I think you said that it's wrong for me to assume that people are not born with an identity, or that people are not born with a gender. And I think that it's wrong to assume that people are born with a gender. I think it makes no sense that you would be born with any identity whatsoever.
I'm not assuming the mechanisms because I don't know what all the mechanisms are. I think that may or may not be contested at the academic level, like Tuna was saying, high up in the clouds. But I am contesting that your experience with this can be perfectly mapped onto everyone else's experience, and that therefore the prescription for you is the prescription for them.
No, it's no. I don't think that. I don't think the prescription for me is the prescription for everybody. I'm saying that I understand dysphoria, but there's different prescriptions for different people. And like I said, like maybe like you're the force feeding person with anorexia, where there's literally nothing else you can do. Then yeah, I guess you're gonna have to transition them. But I am able to empathize with trans people, and I don't think that just because I have a personal experience, like it's almost like you're using an argument that makes it so because I have a personal relationship to dysphoria, that means I'm unable to understand them even more than if I hadn't.
It kind of feels like that to me.
Yeah, that doesn't make sense to me. So you're telling me that it doesn't make sense to you. It makes sense to me, but I should be more like you, where even though it doesn't make sense to me, I should just pretend it does and just agree with whatever they say.
I think you should just accept that your experience isn't the universal experience.
Okay, yeah, I already accept that. Like I know that, like I said with the tinfoil, I know that like people that are afraid of tinfoil are not actually afraid of masks that are glowing in the dark that they think are like a demon. I accept that my experience of terror is different from theirs, but I'm trying to map on to tinfoil what I can parse together. And I feel like I have a lot to parse together as far as dysphoria goes. And I feel like I understand it in many ways. And in every way that it's ever been explained to me makes perfect sense to me. And I feel like I completely understand it. I just disagree with the prescription. And I don't have necessarily a ready-made perfect better prescription, but I disagree with the prescription of transitioning because I feel that to get acceptance for having changed yourself, and of doing all this work is not being accepted for who you are. It's being I don't think accepting trans people after they transition and after they wear makeup and they like spend all this time on their appearance and everything, that's not true acceptance. That's accepting them for a facade.
We should be accepting them at all stages of transition, pre and post, during. But also, I don't think it is that they're trying to gain societal acceptance only. I think it's also that they're trying to ameliorate the internal experience of gender dysphoria, which is unique, distinct, and unknown to me, unknown to most of humanity. It's a pretty minor percentage of the population who really experiences that and knows what it's like. So I can map parts of my experience onto some of the journey that trans people go on, but I can't fully understand it. And so I trust their reporting about what it's like and what they need.
I don't think they're aliens.
They're not aliens, but they're having a distinct human experience.
You can explain to me schizophrenia. I don't have schizophrenia, but it can be explained to me in a way that lets me.
And you could try to imagine having schizophrenia.
Yes, but you're telling me that
it's not the same as having schizophrenia.
But you're telling me that and I think schizophrenia would be like an extreme example of something that'd be radically different from my own mind. But I don't think that dysphoria is nearly as radically different. And you're telling me it's impossible for me to ever understand it, and I should just believe whatever they say.
No, I don't think it's. No, but I think you're having a hard time with it because
I think I'm having a good time with it.
Experience
I think you're having a good time. I think you're having a harder time than me.
Well, I think you're being pushed towards there's only one solution, and it's not the solution that doctors and academics say.
No, I'm not. I don't think there's only one solution. I think that the only one solution. You're ironically.
We got to stop saying solution.
Ironically, the thing that you were saying before is that there's only one solution, that transition.
No.
You moved from that. But like you were saying.
It is the primary, right? It's the evidence-based, here's something we can do. It's
but
affirmative
there is evidence.
Care. Affirmative care means lots of things.
There's evidence-based
for everybody.
There is other evidence-based care that has empirical evidence that one, trans people don't want, because trans people want to transition. So trans people don't want therapy most of the time because they literally want to change their body. So they don't want someone to say, no, don't change your body. We think that you can actually be healthy. And you can become happy and accept yourself without doing that. They don't want that because they want to change their body. So
I see therapy as being part of healthcare for trans people and a part of affirmative care.
A lot of them don't get it. Like, okay, they all should get it, but they don't.
I think that what you're saying. Some people don't want therapy. A lot of people don't.
They all don't
want
because they
therapy
want to transition.
Not even just trans people, like just people. It is hard to get somebody to the therapist.
But also, no, but the thing that makes it hard is the fact that it comes at the expense of the care. Like, they want to change their body. Therapist is not changing their body.
Well, the therapist is part of a whole system of support, and which is a part of affirmative care for the trans person. Therapy is one aspect, and it should be kind of continual throughout the stages, depending on the need, and definitely very present in the beginning, because we go from least invasive to most invasive in terms of care. But I was going to say too, we don't have enough therapists. Like there's, like you said, and I had the same experience, it was a 6-month waiting list. And for me, it wasn't even a therapist. It was a psychiatrist who would basically be like, so what's your problem? What do you want from me? And then I'd be like, oh, my problem is OCD. What do I want from you? I don't know. I want help. And then they would probably be like, okay, so I can give you this drug, that drug, that drug, or that drug. I can prescribe this kind of self-care at home, but I can't give you regular appointments because I don't have the time.
Yeah, that sounds to me awful. Like it sounds like a horror story that you were not given the chance to like have access to help that would have helped you without drugs. That sounds awful.
That's the state of affairs because we don't have enough therapists and we don't have enough psychiatrists, and it is expensive. And honestly, there is a mental health crisis. So not even talking about specific conditions, like people do need help with their mental health often.
So if that's true, why are we acting like anything that's not gender affirming care is transphobic? And
I don't think therapy is transphobic. I think it's part of gender affirming care.
If people people that say that therapy is the answer are called transphobic, and because they are going against what trans people want.
Well, that would be wrong depending on the context and the implications and the hidden values in
I
that
think
statement,
that
right?
all trans people.
Ben Shapiro's saying that. I'm pretty sure it's transphobia, right?
I don't know. Probably. I don't know. I don't know. He doesn't seem like he cares about. I don't know. He seems like sometimes. I think he cares sometimes. Sometimes he cares too much about being an asshole.
Well,
no. So it is there. I don't think that seems like a cop out like I already think that transitioning is throwing trans people under the bus. We're letting them take the burden of something that is all of our fault, and we're just telling them to just change their bodies to be happy rather than doing anything to change society or change their lives for the better, because we don't have resources to actually help them. So we're just saying, oh, fuck it, you're anorexic, just start starving yourself, buddy. Like, it's the same thing to me. And
it isn't that.
Well,
I have a headache, and we're at 3 hours right now.
Oh wow.
Yeah, and I think we circled.
We did.
But we had. Right, we're looping. But we also had meaningful discussion. I think we were able to return to topics and be calmer about them than like the first or second time that we touched them. But we didn't convince each other of anything. And that's okay. I don't really know how to convince someone of anything. And some of the research I've done into argumentation indicates that a lot of what you do when you argue with someone, the way I tend to, is you harden them in their belief. So I hope that's not what I've done.
I think that we've come to understanding. I feel like you hear me more.
I feel like I always heard you. But I was able to disagree with you more gently in the end.
Hmm. Well, that's fuck it. Don't need to do that.
No, it's a lot better than when I was mimicking you.
Well, I don't know how much of that was I'm not gonna take a full blame for that, but
I wouldn't take that on. So,
I think that Tuna, he's a
helped.
genius. Tuna's a genius, but also his impulse to try to settle the conflict. I think we needed to fight more. That's.
Oh yeah, we could have done that. Maybe the concern was that we would not be able to repair if we pushed each other to certain points.
You will always think I'm transphobic, and I will always think that you are.
Soy.
No, absolutely not. Soy is not something I have an issue with. I think you're indoctrinated into a cult.
No, I'm not.
Well, I'm not transphobic, but I don't hate
you. I don't. No, I don't hate you.
You don't have to call me whatever. You can say you think I'm transphobic.
I understand you, but I'm frustrated by that the two things can't be true at the same time for you. That like you had your experience that was valid and that other people may have too, but that also this will just frustrate you, but also that academics and doctors are doing their best, that the people choosing transition.
No, I don't think that those aren't. I do think they're doing their best, but I think that they're doing their best in a medicalized way where they're trying to make a bottled, you can do this solution when the real solutions are going to be much harder and there's going to be more suffering, like the therapy thing, but we don't have access to that. I think we're just like I said, I think we're throwing them under the bus, and we're making products to help them too. Like the drug companies want to make something for these people to take. And I completely, I'm open to there being experiences that are different from my own. But what I'm saying is, literally no person has ever been able to describe an experience to me of gender dysphoria that actually sounds different.
That's sorry, I got distracted because someone yelled outside. Can you say literally the last thing you said again?
I'm able to I'm able to imagine that people are different than me and have different experiences of gender dysphoria. I'm open to that. But I've never had anybody explain it to me in a way that actually sounded different from my own. I've never heard anybody explain it to me in a way that seems like it's actually some radically different thing that nobody else could ever understand. I've heard people say it like people just completely avoid giving any details to try to hide that. Like if they catch on, there's a lot of that goes on where people will say whatever they have to do to justify their gender affirming care because that's what they want. It's literally the same as what if you there's more than one reason you could be trans and have gender dysphoria. What you had really bad and have really bad OCD. What if your really bad OCD led to dysphoria and made you want to transition? That's a possibility that could happen. So in that case, do you think that it would have been good for people to have just let you transition?
OCD doesn't cause dysphoria.
It could.
Can you hear me?
Could.
Okay, good.
Yes.
I was I was frozen for a second, but I heard everything you said.
Okay.
I think that it's deeply cynical to think that drug companies are just producing drugs, and that doctors are just prescribing drugs because it makes them money, it makes the drug companies money, and trans people are sheep being fed to slaughter, and that they are lured by sort of the enticing idea, blah, 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 and they're being taken advantage by everyone.
They're lured by their mental health crisis.
That's deeply cynical and inaccurate, and I know that because I've read the abstracts at the very least of like, what was it, 11 different studies all saying that like this is the approach that we have that works right now, though it is not perfect. But I will grant you that you seem to be commiserating to some extent with the trans experience, but then you project your experience so much that it includes their chosen treatment.
No, yeah, it does preclude their chosen treatment, but I don't care what their chosen treatment is. That's the thing. Like sure, the science, the data that's all mostly revolving around self-reporting, not all, is all going to be saying that this is the only treatment we have. Yeah, it's actually not the only treatment we have. It's the only treatment that's readily accessible. We don't even have a lot of data on actually like therapeutic treatment because we don't have like that much resources to even do that much. And like people don't, and in the cases where we do have resources, like with kids, the desisting rate for kids that start going to therapy because they're questioning if they're trans is incredibly high. I think it's like 70% or something. I don't know. Maybe I'm wrong. Maybe it's 50%. Let's just assume it's 50 just to be safe. I think it might have been 70, but let's assume it's 50. Like, so when we actually do things that aren't just giving people like the drugs and letting them transition, we actually have a really high desisting rate. So all the facts line up to me, like to point to exactly what I think. Like all the yeah, of course there's all the data. Like I'm repeating myself, but of course all the data says that this is the only treatment. Yeah, because it is the only treatment that we have access to. But it sucks and it makes people's lives worse.
I don't mean to say that like people don't have access to therapy when they're undergoing gender affirming care or if they're going to seek treatment for gender dysphoria. Therapy is like a part of the first stage of treatment and the evaluative process for someone who is trans. Like I've already said this a few times, but it goes from least invasive to most invasive in terms of care. And you don't proceed further than you need to. And there's criteria that need to be met to advance to different stages of care.
Yeah, they just make you like wait a while. Like, you feel you want to take the drugs. Well, tell me if you want to take the drugs 6 months from now. Yeah, we didn't actually give you a therapist or, actually like try to help you. But if you change your mind, like that's basically the fucking standard for adults. Like I was just telling you, the standard for kids. That we have where we actually have them go through mental health like facilities, we have them get a therapist and shit. The desisting rate is incredibly high. I'm pretty sure it's 70%. So
I think adults are offered therapy as well.
I like if like that first, like, yeah, kids are forced to go to therapy and they have a massive desisting rate. Adults are not forced to go to therapy, whether they're offered it or not. And they don't want to go to therapy because what they want is to change their sex. So why the hell would they? I want to change my sex. I'm going to go to a doctor because I want to change my sex. Oh, don't change your sex. Go to therapy. Fuck you, doctor. Fuck anybody that tells me that I shouldn't be changing my sex. I know what I want. I know what's best for me. That's basically the attitude. That's the attitude of everybody saying anything otherwise is transphobic. Like calling those people transphobic is the same attitude. Like if you, I know if statistically what's best for you actually is to go to therapy.
Most trans people that I've talked to about this agree with gatekeeping, agree that therapy is an important first step, and that therapy is actually a good thing throughout your life, especially if you have a permanent condition like this. So If there's a mismatch
because they think that
between
they're
the
the
ideal
real trans,
scenario,
but
the
they
one
think
that's
that
being
they're the
prescribed
sorry.
by academics, and
There
then that's a
there are academics that agree with me.
situation where, unfortunately, reality doesn't always line up with perfect prescriptions. But that is the ideal, that
those trans
therapy
people
is
that
offered to people who present with gender dysphoria.
Yeah, and I'm telling you that they don't want it. And those trans people that are telling you that they're pro gatekeeping, those are the trans people that think that they're the real trans people and the other people are not the real trans people.
They're just parroting what the data shows. That like this is an important
data doesn't
first step.
show anything about who the real trans people are.
No, it shows that there should be a process, which you could call gatekeeping, therapy and non-invasive treatment that precedes more invasive treatment, but that it's all a part of affirmative care.
I don't think so. I think if your therapy is part of affirmative care, like if you were to say like anorexia affirmative care, I think that you should go to jail if you're doing anorexia affirmative care. It's like pro ana. Like I don't think you should be doing that. Like like I don't understand.
Anorexia
why
is bad. It's different.
Yeah,
this is a
just
different
like
concept.
dysphoria, gender dysphoria is bad.
Yeah, it doesn't feel good, and the treatment that we have for it is affirmative care, which isn't all
therapy.
Hormones, isn't all surgeries. Some of that care is therapy.
Yeah, the care that the kids get before they're allowed to get literal gender affirming care.
Adults aren't disallowed to get therapy. Like therapy,
they're
might
not
be
disallowed, but they don't have access to it. Yeah, it's not. It's like really expensive and really hard to get access to, and unless you're like really poor or something, and you can get like Medicaid or whatever. I have Medicaid, so I can go to therapy until I get more money. Yeah, all adults are not denied access to it, but they just don't have access to it. And kids that are forced to go to it, it's not gender affirming. If they're going to a therapist that is gender affirming, then there is no reason that they're ever going like there's no reason to question that they're ever going to stop wanting to transition. But like the point of therapy is to test non-gender affirming.
The point of therapy is actually to assess the situation and determine what the diagnosis is and the best
then that's not what I'm talking about.
Forward, and to evaluate progress with primary first steps.
Okay, then that's an evaluation. That's not therapy. First time you go to a therapist, you get an evaluation. Actual therapy, when they try to do CBT,
an evaluative process precedes therapy. Yeah.
Yeah, and doing CBT would be the opposite of gender affirming care. It would be self-affirming care, where you're trying to make somebody comfortable and make them not feel dysphoric.
Oh, you're back.
Okay.
Sorry.
Something like CBT cannot be accurately defined as gender affirming care because you're trying to make them comfortable without changing themselves.
It's a part of palliative care at the very least. Or maybe that's not the right term, but you're trying to make someone more comfortable with the condition that they're experiencing. That doesn't mean that like they're not then able to access other forms of affirmative care. Like these things don't exclude each other. Like
I'm not saying that.
It's a process.
Yeah, there's a process. What I'm saying is most adults don't get the kind of mental health care that they actually need in this situation. And the kids that do,
most adults don't get the mental health care
I know they don't.
Point blank,
I know
period.
they don't.
Like,
yeah, I know they don't. But the point I'm making is that most adults that want to transition don't get the type of mental health care that they actually need. And in the case that they are forced to, when kids are forced to get that type of mental health care, they have an incredibly high desisting rate.
So what you should be advocating for, instead of saying that people shouldn't be able to or should not do affirmative care, is advocating for more mental health care in this country. that there should be more therapists and psychiatrists, that should be funded by the government, that there should be government programs talking about how important it is. But I don't see it. I don't understand why instead of that you're going for, well, affirmative care is bad because we don't have enough therapeutic options. Like, the problem that I think you're identifying that I agree with you about is that there are not enough therapists. There is not enough acceptance for the need for therapy.
Okay,
there's also, though, not enough acceptance of people who transition and want to transition.
We need to wrap this up because we're going to, I know you have a headache and I'm starting to get a headache, and like, we just need to stop.
It's these headphones.
Yeah, the headphones always do it to me too. Okay, Sleepy says, adults are mandated to have therapy if they are getting surgery for a minimum of 2 years. Okay, yeah, if they're getting surgery, like, yeah. I bet that's not even the case with all surgery. Like, one type of surgery that I wanted was to have my trachea shaved, and you can just do a lot of that without even calling it gender affirming care.
Yeah, because that can just be cosmetic surgery.
Yeah. But maybe you need it to get like funded by like government or whatever. Sure. Which is why it's a lot easier to be rich. Because if you have to wait 2 years every time you want to do anything, like get your trachea shaved, you're going to be like really old by the time. Or maybe they just like after 2 years, they just let you open the floodgates and do whatever you want. I don't know. But yeah, like surgery, yeah. Hormones, I think it's a lot less. And
Smith.
You need a what?
Smith.
What?
It's just over.
All right.
Okay.
Bye,
Smith.
Bye. It's not over to the femboy Smith shrieks. Okay. Have a good night. It's over. Snort some methamphetamine or whatever. See you on next time.